And so, which is pretty impressive, we're actually on time for once. So that's something new. Welcome all of you who are joining. We're going to be talking about a bit of a different subject today, tonight, this morning, wherever you are in the world. What I've called the Black Bay effect. It's going to be a bit of a talk around this subject that's been on my mind quite a lot lately. So I want to say hi to you in the chat and get into the discussion. There's a very good question at the very beginning by Slad Crew saying, is it possible that major players like Revolution, Hodinkee are simply paid to make favorable reviews? We would like to think so, but I know for a fact that these companies, if that was the case, there would be serious repercussions. I want to start by just showing this off because this was a video that came out on Thursday. I'm going to put a little link in the corner for you if you'd like to see it at a later stage. It's all about how the chronometer changed the world. It's actually a much more fascinating subject than Black Bays and Tudor and all of the rest. It's a bit of history. It goes into looking at GMTs and world time complications. It's a lot of fun, and for some reason the algorithm didn't really like the video itself because it died as soon as it went out. So if you'd like to see it, I will put a link in the corner for a future date. I'll just leave this on the screen for a moment while I say hi to all of you who are joining. Brummy, Zane, Dan, Thomas, Michael, Gary, Raymond. So good having you all here. Jenks, Ryan, Megan, Arthur. That's fantastic. Welcome, Megan. Blue Shirt, Watch and Pray, Thomas. It's so nice. Thank you all for joining. It's an absolute pleasure having you here. And the talk's going to be a little bit different. We're looking at something that came to me the other day when I was just kicking back. I think I was drinking, and the thought suddenly hit me. For some reason this week, all that's been on my mind is what's going on with the release of this new Tudor Black Bay, Blue Bay, whatever you want to call it. And I put out a video on Tuesday. I'll link that in the corner of the screen if you'd like to see it again as a replay in the future. I put a video out on Tuesday that was quite rushed and not as well thought out as I would have liked it to be. So the thinking here is to sit down and be a lot more methodical with this discussion. I want to hear your feedback. I want to actually read the feedback that the video received, which was kind of 50-50, which I liked. And I don't want it to be an all positive, all negative thing. I want us to actually really look at this quite centralized. Even if you're not interested in the Black Bay as a watch, if you're not interested in Tudor as a brand, I highly recommend you listen to this because it's not just so much about the watch and the brand itself. It's about the whole catalyst effect. And referring back to the butterfly effect, there is some kind of link there with regards to a variable changing the scheme of things in its entirety. So let me say hi to all of you, more of you in the chat. There's lots of you joining here. Let's see who else. Megan, again, it's great having you. Thank you for joining. Ryan, Dan, Sebastian. I said hi to Michael already. And there's a few more chatting about curries and all the rest. And Dan saying, yeah, the Pelagos is great. It really is something nice. And if you'd like to get a hold of me in the chat, tag me at IDGuy so I can reach it and see it quicker, which will help. If you'd like to ask me questions as we go through, for sure, that'll be great. We can definitely jump around on a few subjects, but I want to keep it focused on this one in particular because I think it's poignant and important, not so much about the watch, but what it kind of means for the industry and the buyer's market and what we've seen over this last week that I've done a little write-up, which we'll be looking at in a second. Okay, so just getting my design brain going, you can see the watches on display are kind of linked to this show. For a second, I didn't think I was going to do the live 5, which is the way we kind of warm up and get the show started, but hey, why not? Since they're all related to the family in one way or another. On the left-hand side, we have the original Black Bay 58. We have the Black Bay GMT, the Pelagos, and just seeing this watch, the way it stands with the crown guards, with the titanium case, the ceramic bezel, snowflake dial. There's so many innovative things. I'd like to talk about it a bit more and expand on this. Disco Falcon, your first time here, welcome. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you can engage with the community in the chat. That's what makes this such fun. And dear Artifact, good having you here. And Mark saying, like the design aspects put in, I try my best. It's not always as coherent as I would like it to be, but sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I definitely want to try and expand on this thought exercise this evening or wherever you are in the world. The next one across from the Pelagos is the Black Bay 41. And then on the far right, we have the blue navy blue. I like the term Black Bay Blue Navy. Has a nice alliteration. I think navy blue kind of breaks it up. The Black Bay Navy Blue. Don't know. But seeing these two watches side by side, you notice just how similar they are. You can see the colors have been adjusted in places. I've noticed the crown stem is slightly different here and there. And there are a few changes. So I want to get into that and talk about just the scheme of things when we look at all the watches that have been released. I want to try and like timeline this somehow as well. Don't know how the format's going to go exactly, but Dan asking, he would love for me to do a Navitimer show. For sure, I would like to. If you people enjoy the centralized discussion on a topic, that would be great. And again, and Mason, good to have you here. Even if you're not interested in the Black Bay as a line, if you're not interested in Tudor as a family, I for one would never pick up a Tudor. It's just not a watch that appeals to me. But saying that, there are some things you can learn about what this brand has done, how it's executed it so effectively, and from there we can expand further. So let me carry on by saying this is what I've been wearing for the last 2 weeks and cannot get enough of the little Seamaster. It's a bit of a mess. This photo was a bit rushed, but for 2 weeks straight, this watch is still running at +1, and it just does it all for me with regards to the balance, the symmetry, the presence on the wrist, the movement is fantastic. It's such a superb wearing watch. But this is not a Seamaster show, even though we are going to talk about prices at a later stage. So let's get right into this. I don't know what you want to call it. If it's a write-up, if it's just a presentation of some sort, I'm going to try and centralize this a little bit better on the page so you can see what's going on. And as we go in further, we can start browsing through pages and stuff. Oops, hold on a sec, getting the mouse hand going here. Is that decent? No, give me a sec. I thought I would keep the blue watch on the screen for all of us to look at while I talk through a few little details. I just wrote this out this afternoon, so bear with me. It's Saturday. I spent most of the day in the sun, so my brain might not be on full force. Brami's saying loves the Seamaster. Yeah, it is a gem. It really is. The hour hand irks me. Dino says, yeah, that's one polarizing aspect. We can talk about all these little details as we go through. Thank you for that. Watch and pray. How'd you like those broad arrow hands? Kind of unique. It sure is. I think with regards to just being able to break up, and you can say the same thing about the Black Bay, really. Being able to break up the hours so quickly at a glance, it's very effective. Regardless of whether you like the aesthetic or not, I think it is a very effective approach. It allows you to break your eye away from the minute hand and the hour hand. And being a bigger hour hand, it kind of centralizes on the hour you want exactly. It also means that you don't necessarily have to look at the hour so much. The minute hand is the one that you really focus on. So many more of you who are joining. Captain Bob from Rob, thank you for that. Jamie, Alex K, great having you all here. And the rest of you who are joining, there's already 150 of you in the show. It's great to have you. And this, of course, this is going to be a divisive subject. I still hold by my original opinion that I had on the video earlier this week, that this watch has been just expanded so much by the hype factor. And we can get into that development. Let me try and get this a little bit better on the screen. I don't know how well you can see this, but I don't know. We'll try our best. This presentation format can always be a bit iffy at times. But thank you for the super chat. And James Conn, stream where the Black Bay blue goes to die. No, that's not the idea here. Definitely isn't. Because there are some positives behind this, which we will also address. Some things that I've actually worded before a long time ago. Just talking about things like size and presence. And they're not only negatives assigned to this thing, there are also lots of positives. Of course, I'll talk about the creativity aspect and how it doesn't really have it there, but creativity doesn't need to be necessary in a situation like this. So let's just sit and enjoy this. Kick back. Hope you're drinking something good. It's been 8 minutes of housekeeping as it is. Let's try and address something, try and come up with some kind of a theory around this. So the butterfly effect. I don't know how I came across the butterfly. I think it was just one evening I stumbled across it on YouTube and thought, hey, there's some kind of link to this. A variable change in a system that can have a greater effect down the line. And I love these examples. This is definitely not scratching on the entirety of the butterfly effect, but just as a basic run through linked to the industry, this watch, as an example, can be something that we can look at very keenly under a microscope or a magnifying glass and say that it might just have a big effect on the industry that we see now. Even though this piece is using a blue format, it's using stainless steel. This is not new. But the format of producing it in a smaller size, a size that seems to be a lot more appealing for lots of people. I don't know. It's a broad end subject, and there's a lot more to it that we can, of course, go through as the presentation goes through. Dan's saying, drinking Stella Artois. What am I drinking? A double shot of coffee. Don't know what the brand is. And then an Australian Merlot. I'm finishing off the Merlot. So a bit of alcohol and coffee together creates quite a mix. The brain is still waking up. But the first question that was asked, which is good to address, is it possible that the major players like Revolution, Hodinkee are simply paid to make favorable reviews? You know, I said in the beginning, if that was the case, then all the validity goes out the window. And these brands have too much of an impact to do that kind of thing. And I mean, I know in certain industries like the game industry, the movie industry, there is none of that. If that was the case, then it would just destroy whatever foundation there was. Funnily enough, we think of Hodinkee. If it wasn't for Hodinkee and their promotion of vintage watches, we probably wouldn't see this piece on the screen right now. Bear that in mind. So really, the catalyst in the very beginning was Hodinkee starting out and presenting all of these crazy ideas for vintage watches and how they can be collectible and all the rest. So no, I don't think so. I really don't think that a brand as big as Hodinkee or Revolution would ever be paid off. The smaller reviewers, the same thing. If that is the case, then it'll be terrible, and I'm sure the news would break out. If I was sent this watch, that's something else to consider. If I was sent this watch, would I give it a favorable review or not? And I find it weird that when I listen to many reviews, they always give the positives. They always give what you can clearly see. It's blue, it's the size, it's great, but then they always hold back on the things that they don't really appreciate. I think Theo and Harris had a good point when he said at the very end, it'd be nice to see them bring out something different. But I mean, there can be a lot more details expanded upon there. Raymond, how about a Black Bay root beer color scheme? Well, we know it's going to happen, Raymond. So as this goes through, this is like a 3 or 4 page document that I've written out, just a summary looking at the pros and cons of this watch, but also how the community has reacted to this thing. And as we go through it, I can then share the feedback that I received on the Black Bay video from earlier this week. And then there we can look at the pluses and the minuses. And again, if you would like to ask me some other questions on other topics, we can definitely jump around later on in the show. I just wanted to get this out of the way first and get the ball rolling. So this is definitely not me bashing on the brand at all. I don't want to do that. As Michael's saying, loves his Tudors. You should. With all the detail, as we get to the pros and cons, so many pros. There's more pros than cons. But at the same time, I think the practice is a little bit sketchy, even though we're also dealing with a time in the world where profits are down, businesses need to make money, and this was just such an effective starting point, or should I say, springboard, that we are now going to see later on. Jamie, thank you. Hype. That's hilarious. I didn't even know that was a tag. Okay, so let's get to this now. I'm always, as it's going to be, me jumping back and forth in the chat. So butterfly effect, chaos theory, it's an amazing thing. It's really incredible. And some great examples to look at. When you're breaking a rack on a pool table, you line up all the balls, we get ready, use the cue ball, you strike it. Those balls will never land in the same place twice. Similar to throwing a tennis ball into a pond where the splash will always be different. Weather conditions is a good example of chaos theory. And it's not exactly linked to this, but what I wanted to try and highlight is that this small event could make a very big splash in the industry for years to come as we go through. So let's get past this and look at the positives and negatives of this watch. I took a bit of time to think through a few details. They're definitely not deep, but they can be pretty realistic. Positives. I don't think this needs much of a expansion. It's a simple piece, perfect proportions. I think that's one aspect that needs to be highlighted. They have, without a doubt, nailed this watch when it comes to specifications like understanding wrist presence, not too much, not too little, comfortable. What you're getting as a package with a proper clasp, you're getting proper bezel, proper movement, all of this as we go through. The color scheme, this being coming from someone who has handled 7016 snowflakes in the past, the colors look phenomenal. They really do look great, and they've done a great job there as well. It's not too bright, not too dull. It has a lively appearance to it. In-house movement, as we've already said, that's great. Referring back to the price, I think that's important. Great value for money, as most of us know, and great resale. And that is part due to why people love this watch. We get to the cons, though. The color. This watch, actually the watch in general, dealing with snowflake hands and a snowflake dial. No, sorry, we don't have a snowflake dial. Snowflake hands in general, you're dealing with a big crown, rivet-styled bracelet that doesn't need to be there. It's polarizing. Just the idea of the handset as it is. And the color is another factor that's polarizing, which is what I address in the next line, I think. This is my opinion on the subject. You can tell me otherwise, but I don't think blue is as versatile as black. Black is a color that we see the most often because of the fact that it's just so usable in any setting, whether it's changing out straps, whether it's various occasions you're wearing it to meetings, whether it's tuxedos, suits, casual wear. Blue, on the other hand, yes, it's unanimously loved. I love the color blue. But in saying that, is it as versatile as black? Now, again, if we have to bounce the idea further, the issue with this watch is, of course, it has a gilt dial. It has a red highlight on the bezel, so that is not the most easy to wear watch on a daily basis if you're dealing with colors. Just the idea of faux Tina that was mentioned in a show. Just the idea of the whole gilt dial and everything else. That was removed. Whether it's a good thing, bad thing, it's up to you. This piece is a lot more streamlined. And I did mention, stripped down. So I did say in the negative camp that I believe it to be kind of a stripped down version of the 58. It doesn't offer as much, roundedness. The one argument I had about this piece, let me try and get it on the screen better for you. I hope this is okay and you're seeing it fine. As I said, the beginning discussion is going to take a bit of time, but I hope you're enjoying the talk. Yes, Clive, I did get the pics. I'll save them for next week's Wrist Shot Week show. So this piece, the blue dial, I believe, is a much more stripped down version of the black. I think the black played it a little bit more creatively with the choice of a gilt dial and red highlights and all of those elements. But in general, the stripped down version can be seen as a positive and negative. It's just as great when it comes to being a watch that you can wear on a daily basis. Is the watch as exciting, though, to wear? That's another thing. The gilt dial plays differently in light. The blue dial and the blue configuration would probably get a bit flattened in certain lights. Might even go dark, a darker shade of navy blue. I don't believe it to be just as vibrant as black, and this gold effect could possibly go. That's another highlight. But this is the one big aspect I want to highlight here. And actually, I'm going to try and embolden this as much as possible. You pay an extra $1,000 and you're in Rolex territory. Now, that's something we need to consider. That's something that needs to stay for a second. And there's a few questions coming in. Tim saying it's just trendy blue. Yeah, I agree. Rich Buddy, the minute hands are too long. That's a good point. I think it works pretty well. It meets the rail pretty nicely. It's neat in a way. Let me try and expand this if I can. But it does reach the full length of the dial. It manages to hit the very end of the rail, which is something pretty unique. Catching up, there's so many comments going on in the chat. I'm sorry if I'm missing all of you. So it has some sterile, clean neatness that some Seikos have. Yeah, Doctor, I think that's what I read here. So, okay. Again, not just Rolex territory. That's another point to mention. There are many other brands, Seikos and the rest. Pay another $4,000 and you're in Moser country, Tim says. And there's lots of chat about other brands as well. And this is one thing that's sparked my concern in a way. Why would you buy probably one of the most legitimate homage watches that pay tribute to a Rolex, apart from buying a Rolex? And the question is, why would you do that instead of picking up the watch that really started it all? I meant OP. That's it, Alex. Of course, it's the very entry-level section of the Rolex territory. But even still, it's up to you. At the end of the day, it is up to you. Value for money, what brand you're buying yourself into. But I think it's just one of those aspects. It's definitely sparked my thoughts a little bit. And speaking of which, I found the Rolex that I hope to save for over the next year or so. But this made me think a bit more. And we'll get further into it. There's talk about the bug that's been going around and how that being the big issue. For sure, Matthew, it is. We're going to get further into it. And just another con that I want to highlight is that this watch is going to be sold. We could even say that a lot of the time, from a lot of this hype that's been coming up, it's being bought to be sold. And let's expand on this point. And Mark's saying, can't be enjoyed. Absolutely. I'm definitely not bashing on this watch for its aesthetics and details like that. I want to focus in on the business practice and how the community seems to have taken this in. It is a beautiful watch, no question. It really isn't. I just think the reaction has been a little bit much, as we will now get to in the summary, the overall summary. The Black Bay effect. Oh wow, I forgot I did this. So, okay. This is not just linked to this watch. This can be linked to all watches that are hyped, quote unquote. But I'd like to expand on this a bit more, have it in writing so it's easier to read. I hope you can see this okay. A predictable release and ubiquitous positive reaction. Now, this can be for anything. This can be for pieces like APs. This could be for a Rolex model that comes out. The watch addresses what people were looking for, but does not innovate. I think it all pretty much explains itself. You know, it's not deep in there. This piece, though it looks gorgeous, the approach was cookie cutter. Yes, definitely was. The result is fantastic. People love the fact that it was released the way it was, but there is no extra level of innovation. There was talk about the material, the metal being a different color. Maybe they introduced more nickel into the format. Don't know. Oh, look, it's blue, as Neferion says. That was a comment that was mentioned a few times. The blue color seems to be the one aspect that drives up the Black Bay effect in all the industries that we've seen lately, in all the areas. But the stud saying, I passed on the new navy blue due to it being on a strap as opposed to bracelet. Since then, I've seen it on a bracelet and regret not buying it. Interesting. Thank you for that. And we're going to continue going through this. I would like to highlight a bit more around the industry as a second. I'll read these little details. I've also had another design issue. Rich Buddy says, notice the minute track is set too far inside. Notice Swiss made is outside the track. Good point. Very good point. That is not traditionally how it would be laid out, if I'm right. We're talking about vintage pieces. And then that just takes us on a whole new path, discussing things like snowflake dials and how that should be implemented to complete the symmetry of where the hand is placed. A bit more open-ended. But SR Watch is saying, I think a lot of people maybe don't understand the significance of the blue dial Tudor and the links to their Navy Marine National heritage. Very important point. And that is one thing that a lot of reviewers and newspapers, Telegraph, etc., they're expanding on this and talking about how important it is. One thing that they nailed was getting the color right. I said this in the beginning that I have handled 7016s in the past, some really rare ones. The South African Navy 7016s, I think there's only like 12 or 15 in the world known. And they really have done a good job with matching the color scheme, for sure. And that's really, I think if they had done the presentation a little bit better, I don't know if Tudor expanded upon this in their discussion or in their final, their unveiling. But if they had expanded on it a bit more about the Navy history, I'm sure they might have. They have a Breitling movement. I'm pretty sure this uses the same Breitling movement. So let's now carry on with the bullet points, because I'm going to be just referring to the chat for ages. This is fun, though. I hope you're enjoying it. It's a little bit more of an open-ended talk around the subject. So the Black Bay effect, again, not linked to just this watch, but the general, the Q Timex is a great example of this too. We saw it last year. A litmus test, such a great comment that someone left in the video. It's a litmus test for the community. Forced hype and the sudden want factor. So when we see this watch being flooded in the market, we'll expand on this in a second, actually. I don't want to talk about it too deeply. Highlights sheep mentality. It's about the hot new model. I think that's pretty safe to say when we talk about pieces that are newly released and everyone wants to see. A business move, as Dino says, that's something that I wanted to expand upon. The characteristics, and those I would say are the negatives. The two top bullet points, litmus test, highlighting the sheep mentality. That's the top two, but the lower two are kind of positives. Characteristics show that the watch community wants what is offered. And this is important to see. There was lots of talk about the P01. I think this is a brilliant statement as well. The P01 was released last year to, should we say, negative feedback. I really enjoyed looking at it a year later as a retrospective, talking about it being this failed prototype that has a great development behind it, that it actually shows us what the in-between of development looks like. It's not this perfect thing. It's deliberately made to be something that's rough around the edges to show its prototype intent. Okay, so this piece, the way it was executed, again, going back to the pros of it being perfectly sized for what people want, not too big, not too small. Comfort factor, the way you can actually wear this watch on a daily basis. It's not necessarily too polarizing next to pieces like the gilt dial variant that we've seen. That's up to you. But then next to that, something that's important, the last line, I say no creativity can sell. And this is one of my failure points, I think, in that video that I put out on Tuesday, very quickly. I rushed through it, is that you don't have to be creative to sell something. And this is the perfect example. I love talking about creativity and the idea of expanding upon ideas and all the rest. It isn't necessary. It isn't needed. We think of Apple and VW and other brands. They can create the same thing again and again and still sell just by making a few tweaks in places. And this is not a creative move. This is a business move, which I think is an important point to highlight. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. At this time, where we are in the world, companies need to make money. And we will see something else that was very well pointed out. I think Mark actually highlighted this on Instagram the other day. And then further on to this point, I say this watch may have a rippling effect in the industry, linking to this whole butterfly effect. A small movement in this direction of bringing out a smaller size watch would possibly push, I mean, you can just see the feedback. As we get to the final summary after this page, the feedback has been so positive, unanimously positive almost, you could say, ubiquitous, it's better. It shows that people want more affordable watches that are great value, perfect, smaller in size, simpler in its appearance, and that blue is still a color that rules that everyone wants. So it's all these little things. And again, Mason's saying I'm not interested. Even if you're not interested, I think there are a few things you can take away from this. It's definitely not focused entirely on the watch, but it's a good watch we can observe for the industry's sake. Okay, but I want to get to the final summary, and this is what I have been, contemplating and thinking about the most over this week, actually. And again, I'm missing your comments. I think Dear Artifact said something. The P01 is evidence that Tudor's willing to live up to its slogan. It's just unfortunate that the design was misguided and they were punished for being daring. And that's the thing. I mean, it's almost like a retreat at this point. They're retreating back to something that they know is going to work. Good for them. I mean, it really is a good business approach if they can get a watch out like this that does everything that people wanted and satisfy what people want. But there's more. Let's just develop this. So this is what I've heard and seen as a summary in the market. Tudor has flooded the marketplace with the navy blue, which is a surprise. It's not something that you need to spend a lot of time, at least in the beginning. It wasn't difficult to find. I've heard so many people picking them up very easily. But the watches are already being sold on the gray market for between 500, 1,000 plus over list. And that's one of the negatives. This watch is being bought to be sold because of the hype, quote unquote, factor. In saying that, though, I just find it hilarious. I mean, the watch was kind of released the 1st of July. And within day 5, the 5th of July, they were already up for sale. Stickered, boxes, you name it. Clive saying, I think part of the reason for the hype is the relative scarcity of new releases for this year. And very good point. Actually, it was another point that was in my head. Because there hasn't been anything released this year of any real, impact, this is something that many can latch on because it is affordable, well executed, attainable, good looking. So all these little things. One more thing, social media, Instagram, YouTube, as you've probably seen, is flooded with unboxings and wrist shots linked to this watch. You cannot use the platform. I'm not even looking at the words now. You cannot use the platform to look at watches and not see them on your feed, which I find is unreal. It's quite amazing. I've never experienced it before. And that is, again, part due to attainability factor. People can easily pick them up now. Things like the color is very expressive and vibrant, and people want a blue dial watch and everything else. So another few points I highlighted here. The watch is being built up as the best release of 2020 by some reviewers and some brands. Of course, this hype is going to push the demand. Reviewers will continue to push the demand. And eventually, I think that similar to the Black Bay 58, they're going to be selling them for a profit within the next 3 months, plus or minus 3 months time. And this just seems to be a constant thing where many are impulse buying this watch. It's not a connection thing. It's not, I love it because it's blue or because it's a watch I've been looking for such a long time. The majority of people are getting this because it's just there. It's something that you can grab because it's affordable in the scheme of things. But that then means that it won't remain in lots of collections because no one bought it with any kind of love for the watch. There's no deeper connection, as I said here. And this is like my final bullet point, saying you're being told it's great. Make up your own mind. Do not buy into the hype. It's like the most important underlying detail that I try to emphasize in that Tuesday video, but I love it because it's blue. Mark, and that's just it. Another small detail, and I think you highlighted this, Mark, that Rolex has suddenly announced that they are going to be releasing models this year after Tudor's launch of the navy blue. The thinking is there's no fact or reality in this, but this watch, the release of this piece, is such a good springboard to tell the world that there is money, that people are willing to buy a new watch, they're willing to spend, and then as a business decision, it's hey, well, we can release our new stuff because people clearly are interested in buying, so why not? And this was announced just earlier this week that Rolex wants to bring out their new lines of pieces later on in the month or the year. I don't know when exactly. But that's my shtick for the last 30 minutes. Can you believe I've been talking for 30 minutes? Bud saying, glad your dad is doing well. Megan, I haven't even addressed your dad and the story there. I really hope he's doing okay. Sounds like you've been spending the weekend with him, which is great. And so it is. I mean, there's a good little 3-page write-up on all of these little bits and pieces. I don't want to leave this on the screen too long. We've seen this for a while. Let me just full screen this for a second and jump to some proper images. These are, of course, renders on the screen. But there we go. Black Bay 58 and navy blue, or blue navy, or whatever you want to call it. Get out of the way, mouse. Please just get out of the way of the screen. And I want to catch up with you in the chat. No matter where I put the mouse, something pops up. There we go. Michael says he needs an English-German translator. Oh, sorry about that, really am. Bud saying it's cheap, basically. There's more to it than that, but I mean, it is an attainable watch, and because of that reason, I think a lot of people are definitely, their attention is being pulled to it for that too. And I'm missing so many of your chats, as always. One big strike about the baby Smurf. Archie likes it. There's not much to really hate about it. I think the underlying thing is the way the community has reacted, not so much. The way the industry seems to be pushing, at least at this time. Again, this is all relative to what's going on in the world, and that's something to pay attention to as well. It's a watch that's been brought out that clearly people want because of its simplicity, because it's a new watch in the market. And yeah, I mean, we could just expand on this. Where's the redesign image? I don't have it open, Jamie, but it really wasn't that good. I dropped in the snowflake numerals and they weren't the right size. I looked at it again. It's great to be fine. Dr. Strangelove, that's this watch. Nefarion, that's a very good point. Thank you for that. Very good. Anyway, I'm going to get rid of this and get to some actual images of the watches on screen. We've been chatting about this now for how long? Half an hour, well over half an hour. It's pretty amazing. I can't believe that presentation took the length it did, but I hope you enjoyed it. And there's lots of other little factors. Like I tried to specify in this short video that I made that there are so many Black Bay blues already on the market. You've got the smiling self-winding 41mm variant. You've got the Black Bay 36 that I'm pretty sure comes in blue as well. And that's just the way it goes. Slowly but surely develops. But you just cannot go anywhere without seeing this watch being shared around the place. And, you know, call this a prediction, call this an assumption, don't know. But I really don't think a lot of these watches aren't going to stay in collections for long. I have a feeling that this piece, though it looks gorgeous and great, and the blue color is unique, it's very unique to the Tudor brand, and I think that's so important to focus on. As mentioned at the beginning of the show, that this watch really does capture what Tudor tried to do with their Submariners over time. I shouldn't say try, they achieved with their Submariners over time. Bringing that back is a great thing, but it's not the first time. I mean, I had the GMT up. I wanted to talk about the GMT and just how the attention has been pushed away from this watch now because of what's been going on. But the release of this piece, I think the appeal was even greater than the blue dial variant. I don't know. When this watch is released in a 58, I think we're going to see quite a big leap People are going to love the fact that it's in that color. But, sorry, that size. What am I saying? I'm trying to do two things at once. But the Pelagos, is the resolution okay here? It is kind of. The Pelagos is a watch that I think is just one of those pieces. It's the real sweet spot that the brand has been able to bring out over time. One of the main drawbacks, I guess, is the size. Sorry, I'm missing you in the chat. There's so much, it's like a full-on debate going on here. I love it. So let's try and scroll up. Exactly, we're all thinking about it. It all helps Tudor. It's our watches, thanks. Megan saying, I don't dislike it, but I wouldn't buy one. Interesting, Megan. And Dan saying, can I have a look at the Tiffany CT60 annual calendar? Sure, we can deviate away from these watches in a second. Why is the 39 millimeter popular and not the 41? Now, Mark, that's a good point. And, I've spoken about proportion and scale, but I think it also has a lot to do with the marketplace, being someone who have, in general, the wrists are pretty small in places like the East. And you can appeal to a lot more people with a smaller watch that they know is going to fit better. I mean, I, for one, as much as I love the Pelagos, I could never wear it. It's just not a watch that looks proportionally right on my 6 and 3/4 inch wrist on a normal basis. This size and scale makes it a lot more practical to wear, and at the same time calls back to the vintage cues of smaller watches in the past. So all these small things. Dino saying they're going to sell out and then resell them for at least 35% more. I'm predicting it. Good point. And that's what we've seen with the Black Bay Black, if I remember right. I'm trying to scroll up and catch up with all of your chats. Dear Artifact saying it's a smart release. Let me get another shot up for you to look at. There's some really great photos, but it's hilarious how some of the feedback has been just so basic. Anyway, I'm going to carry on through. Smart release for a quick and easy success, given the current state of the world. However, it's just a bridge to hopefully really exciting releases following from the Blue Bay. And that's what we all hope for. I mean, it's something that it didn't even register in my mind that this being a business practice is fully correct, that they needed to make something that they knew would be popular and sell. It's great that they were actually even able to make these pieces, considering what's been going on. But in saying that, last year, the P01 release was very bold, very daring. And even I was questioning what the hell were they doing. But in a little bit more retrospect and thinking about it further, it's a fantastic looking watch, very divisive, not appealing to everyone, but that's the way it is. Rich Buddy saying, for the money, I want to spend on a second saltwater watch. Honestly think it's going to be a Doxer. Go for it. Doxers are the gem. And I hope Blue Shirt is enjoying his. The GMT is just a copy of Rolex, Sebastian says. And this is where we get to the line where so many people still consider that the Tudor is a brand that is just imitating Rolex. And I think I've said this before, that it's kind of like the most legitimate homage watch that you can get out there, because it's Swiss made, it's all in-house, and it is directly in line. It's linked up to Rolex as a brand. So they have carte blanche to do what they want, and they can get away with it, really. But saying that, they need to move away from this format, man. They can do so much more with what they have. What's the point of just releasing another Submariner? That's another point. The demand for Rolex professional models are just through the roof, unreal, irritating. This is such a great place for you to jump on, get an experience, and then sell off when you're not interested in it anymore. Rolex Cellini Prince. My wife is pregnant, and I informed her that the stud fee is allowing me to buy a perfect Amiga 2254. Ron, that is just great. This is great. Anyway, there's so many chats going on here. Christopher Ward, that's another example of a watch. Pelagos is definitely a thick boy. Just go, that's it. Not just the thickness, the size, and all of those details. And there's chat about movements. Thomas Burnett, great to see your comments. Let's see. Again, I'm trying to read the comments that are tagged to me. The expansion class on the Pelagos is amazing. It sure is, Dan. And that's something that we should focus on, is that the Pelagos is really the swan song from modern Tudor as a brand. Tudor, CHUDA, because they just did everything and more. They didn't skimp on the details. That looks like a scratch. They didn't skimp on the details with this piece. They deliberately focused on crown guards. They wanted this to be their Submariner, and they pretty much succeeded. Titanium, I mean, such a better material, lighter in weight, it's more durable. Surely the finish is not as nice. It's not as glittery, since it's all brushed. The color is slightly dull. But things like the adjustable clasp, all of those factors play into the equation, making it such a more well-rounded in-house watch that actually plays on the tune, or plays off the tune that Tudor has always sung, with the 7016 snowflakes and all the rest. Everything about this watch, I mean, it has a helium release valve, doesn't it? All of these little details, it's like a performance car with the package on top of it. And you're not getting that with something like this. The best thing that you're getting here is proportion and scale, which I fully agree is great. But the hands and the numerals, the plots, they don't sing to me just as much as a snowflake dial with snowflake hands. If you want a Tudor, this is Tudor in the way it presents itself. Yeah, so much. I mean, it's a very deep discussion. I really didn't expect this to go on for so long, but it's a lot of fun. I hope you're kind of enjoying this. I definitely don't want this to be something that you need to, if you're not interested in the brand, that you should disregard, because there's a lot we can learn about a business practice in this area. Dino saying Rolex wanted us to buy Rolexes without ADs and selling organs. Thus, they gave us Tudor. I'm thankful. Another good point. I mean, the whole idea behind Tudor was to be a brand that was affordable, attainable. But in saying that, it seems like it's going in a different way, where Tudor has always been the creative love child of Rolex. I mean, I made a video about it a year ago. Terrible presentation. The write-up's good, but the actual presentation sucks. But basically saying that Tudor has all the creative opportunity that Rolex doesn't, because they can dig back as far as when were they established? 1910-ish, and take what they want and put them into what they want to produce. They have a lot more opportunity. They've always been the brand that can experiment more, and they do it sometimes, but sometimes they don't, and as we've seen just recently. But the Pelagos is a great piece. I mean, here's the left-hand drive. We definitely have spoken about this watch in the past before, but there's so much to highlight. I think the left-hand drive was also a great addition. Anyway, further developments. How did the bug affect the supply chain for the Black Bay 58? Rich, good question, and I really don't think it did at all. And one of the last points I mentioned was that Rolex is using this as a springboard in a way to see that, I don't know if they are officially, this is just a speculation, this watch being a springboard, should I say the Navy, being a springboard watch that then tells companies that they are, people are available to spend money during this time. Things like that, small little details. Yeah, but as it goes, I think Mark's saying get onto this is not a 4-hour stream. But yes, no, I don't think so. I definitely wanted this to be something like maybe an hour, 2 hours at a max. Look how the track is pushed out beyond the Swiss, Rich Buddy's saying. Again, I'm not exactly observing the watch itself. When we talk about just micro details that this watch executes, let's see, this is a good example. I just enjoy the fact, I mean, there's the helium valve on the side of the case. I just enjoy the fact that they've done things like added some depth to the dial. You notice that there's some stepping here. Swiss made is above the minute track, as Rich Buddy has mentioned earlier. Pelagos crown guards, another detail. There's so many of your comments. I'm sorry if I'm missing your chat. Dino says, your videos are brilliant. Stop knocking them. Yeah, I mean, you have to be critical of your work. So Mason's saying Tudor 58 or Glasuto Rigonal 69, ignoring price. There's no comparison. There really isn't. I mean, you want an original watch from an original brand. I think that there is, you cannot, as much as I really appreciate how Tudor has been able to go on their own way and do their own thing, they're still very much in control by the big brother. And this is a tribute piece. Cut it as thin as you like it. A tribute piece to another brand, their older brother in the family. Talking about the Seamaster 300 that I own, Glasuto Rigonal, the Rolex Submariner. There's no real comparison when we look at a watch like this next to it. They're on different leagues because they were the ones that really established the design styling of their own. Yeah, it's a deep discussion. I'm sure there's going to be lots of divide in this for sure. Dan occasionally likes things. Thoughts on the new Hamilton Tenet watch? Haven't even seen it. As it is, when it comes to preparing videos, my brain switches off. I did want to look at Amiga's new Constellation line that they brought out this week, actually. I missed Thomas Burnett's comment earlier, I think. I'm so sorry for all of you who are missing. I am missing. Pelagos is great, just need a stainless steel version for me. Salty, good point. And as it goes, Thomas, Bark and Jack has he mentioned, I remember this in the last show, in one of the comments of this video, saying that Bark and Jack says that the new Blue Bay has a different color scheme, different metal color. And I have no idea about that. I have never had this watch in hand. And it's a good point to address that if I had this watch in hand, what would my review be like? I have handled the 58, the original 58. And the proportions are great, but it just didn't sing to me much. This piece, on the other hand, colors are great. But again, saying that, it's a divisive subject. I mean, we could talk about this for hours and hours and not get anywhere, but I hope you've kind of enjoyed the first. Eric joining from Loch Lomond. Everyone who is just joining now, watch the first 30 minutes because that's the actual presentation side of things. And I run through a write-up, talk about the industry, but it's not a Submariner, as Sam says. One factor that I do want to point out again is that 1,000 more gets you into Rolex territory. And then a couple more thousand and you're in the professional zone. Actually, a bit more than a couple thousand, but you get the point. And you just have to consider that. Do you want a watch that pays tribute to a brand? Or do you want a watch that is the brand that actually established the design in the first place? So on, so on. And yeah, that's pretty much my shtick on the subject. I think we've discussed it pretty well over the last 45 minutes. But as it is, Dan saying thanks for the shows. It's a lot of fun. I definitely didn't know what to do as a show. I didn't know what to present. And the only reason why I wanted to focus on this was because of the fact that it's been on my mind all week for some strange reason. I've been obsessing about it. I just don't think I was happy with the original video that came out at the beginning of the week. I thought it needed to be broadened and explained in a bit more detail. Now, with a bit of hindsight, we can get into talking about the further details about what's been going on. But there's small things like the rivet bracelet on the watch that people say it's trying too hard, that they're going a little bit too far. The use of gilt dial and everything. One thing that I liked, that I pointed out, was that this does pay tribute to the 6538. It's very faithful in that way. A very specific watch in Rolex's family, where this new model is kind of an amalgamation of many parts, doesn't necessarily pay tribute to the 7016. And I said in the video, I think it would stand basically shoulder to shoulder with the Black Bay Black 58 if it had a snowflake dial. Different, but the same, you know? Tiny little incremental changes that might drive the attention in another direction. Anyway, yeah. So as it is, the chatting is, I'm saving for a waffle dial, bidirectional Milgauss. Oof, that'll be awesome. Really awesome. That is incredible. In summary, I'm not happy about this watch. No, Mark, I mean, I don't know how do I best explain it? I'm neutral. I think that's the best thing a reviewer can be, is neutral on a release. I definitely didn't make this video or run the show or make the hype video that I did this week to gain traction. I wanted to try and hit it from a different angle, saying that you should look at not just the watch, but the overlying. I've been speaking so long, I'm like running out of oxygen here. The overlying theme about how the industry works, how they approach these kinds of releases, and what it could mean for the future. Does this then mean that watches are going to shrink in size? We've seen that Rolex is bringing down the size of their pieces. Now that the Black Bay has received another overhaul in its color scheme, does that then mean that brands like Breitling is going to reduce the size of their watches? Other sports brands, Amiga, would be nice. I'd love to see Amiga reduce the size of their watches. So it goes. Franco's saying that's true, but in the rare field air above the Black 58 price point, you have to pay 80 games if you want to get into the professional. That's another thing. I mean, talking about games, same thing with this piece. I mean, you have to go on a waiting list. At the end of last year, I went into about 4 different ADs around London asking about this watch, you know, ones that supply both Rolexes and Tudors, the group ADs. Not one of them had a Black Bay 58. You can't just go and say, do you possibly have a Tudor GMT or a Black Bay 58? They say, no, sorry, out of stock, to put you on a list. 4 times. So yeah, it's open-ended. I just find it kind of sucks that this whole game is trickling into the Tudor brand as well, because the Tudor brand has always been about attainability next to Rolex's mind games. Jean-Claude Beaver, great to have you here, sir. I really appreciate your perspective on this. You say that the black is nicer, and I've just lost the chat. Oops. Oh, geez, I tell you what, this mouse likes to jump around. Pull up the Smurf, Dino says. Look at the Pelagos. Remove the crown guard's shield, and Pelagos wins the stare down. Okay, that's a good point. Well, we can get the navy blue off the screen. I think we've gotten past that at this point. Rolex Smurf. I mean, these pieces are kind of attainable because they are in white gold and they're the most expensive submariners out there, so they can be difficult to find. Where's a better shot of the Pelagos? Again, apologies for me and my useless hand trying to work this through. Is it better to just look at the render? Might be easier for us. I mean, there's some things, both of the watches really enjoy the idea of a vibrant blue on their dials and bezels. It seems like they nearly share exact color schemes between each other. So, carrying on through the chat, I've missed so many of you. I can see Megan's chatting away with others. Let's keep scrolling down. Bring up the Smurf, done it. Eric Bell said hi to you already. Yes, the Amiga Constellation. Yeah, I would really like to look at it, Mark. I don't think it was a Magenta design, but I do know that it pays tribute to the Manhattan of the 80s, and it seems to really bank on that. And I wanted it to be this contrast to what we've just seen. I actually wanted to make the review this week, but did another video. It's such a clear contrast against what Tudor is doing, apart from the Pelagos. Pelagos is the best example that the family has done. Where, let me just try and pull it up now, actually. What the hell? I'm going to get this off the screen. We're kind of moving away from Tudor. We've been speaking about it for long enough. Constellation 2020. These are beautiful things. Now, where we see that, like I said in the beginning of the video, that Tudor plays it so safe with their creations, Omega deliberately went back to their 1980s Manhattans and tried to give them a facelift. They've done it for the ladies, but this is the men's series now that they've just done. And here we see those 80s influences put into the watch. And I just had a serious deja vu. I think I'm going to get a comment in a second telling me, why would someone buy an 80s styled watch? Clive, I'm waiting for the trebuchet bracelet. I think that was the comment. That's a serious deja vu I've just had, Clive, and you're the one who's instigated that. Amazing. Running Man saying, I don't really agree with this as a sub-homage. It homages previous blue Tudors. Didn't Tudor have a blue before Rolex? Tudor was long heritage in his own right. And very good point, Running Man. I mean, that is the case. And that's just my feeling about the subject, that as it is, they're just making these Submariner-based pieces where we know where the original design came from. I think regardless of color, think about where the original design started. Now, yes, we could say that the Submariner and the Tudor Submariner were built in and around the same time in 1953, 54. But which one was the originator at the end of the day? That's the point, at least. But I mean, it's here or there. Black Bay Bronze stands out. It's a great looking piece. Let's keep scrolling through. I'm missing so many of your chats here. Why wouldn't someone buy an 80s styled watch, Clive? And that's the thing. I wanted to, let me try and like pull up some more pictures and address this. This is a good point. There's some great ones in ceramic as well. What I love so much about the brand, love them or hate them, Omega doesn't mind throwing money away on ideas. They really don't. A lot of the time, it's a guessing game. It's their way of saying, okay, let's try and experiment with this idea. This is a brand that clearly likes to experiment. Look at the Speedmasters, look at their Seamasters, etc. So this time they've said, okay, let's look at 80s designs and see how we could maybe bring them forward. With Roman numerals around the bezel, I mean, what was the thinking? Integrated bracelet, it's so quirky and different, something of that time. And I kind of love the fact that they're a brand next to a brand like Tudor that we've just seen that seems so clinical in the way they bring out a watch, that Amiga can say, okay, let's just throw caution to the wind and say, what the hell? Let's see what we can do, see what people like, see if they like it. I just mentioned already that bezel is awful. Yeah, I mean, it's so true to the Manhattan 82, I think was the original. But this being a part of the Constellation line, it links up with watches like the Globemaster, similar kind of format. It's using its master chronometer movements, as we know. It's a take on an 80s classic that's been modernized in a way. I mean, take it as you will. But I think the approach is something that we can look at from a creative point of view. It's pretty fun. It's pretty interesting to see a brand taking a risk. Risks at this time, especially. Okay, catching up with you in the chat. I need to hit some more wine because I'm getting sober here. And Dan's saying the bracelet reminds me of the Breitling Rulu bracelet. And again, the integrated bracelet styling, all of those approaches, very true to what the Manhattan was like back then. Yeah, carrying on through. Who's Ed White? Are we talking about the Speedmaster? I don't know. I missed it in a second. Agree on both points. We watch guy. Again, if I Amiga or Tudor, one writer says And Chi-Town, great to have you from Southern California. What a great place, great time of year. You guys must be enjoying the sun. So would you take Amiga over Tudor? That's the question that one writer says. And I'm sure most of you know my opinion. I mean, I'm wearing it, but that's something you need to pay attention to as well. Pay a little bit more money and you're in a very high-end Amiga in the family. Thoughts on the Hodinkee Longines Pilot Spirit Blue, Jamie says. I didn't even know that that was a thing. I get so delayed when it comes to releases. I've just heard that Philips Auction Platinum Daytona has just got the highest bid ever, which is ridiculous. Hodinkee Longines, I mean, they've done some great stuff in the past. I must say, when it comes to partnerships, Hodinkee has made, this is one of them that I really find fascinating. A recreation of a 40s, late 30s, early 40s classic. Okay, so let's see, 40 millimeter Pilot Spirit. Is that the watch? No, it's not. Pilot Spirit. So I'm guessing this is a new release piece. I really don't know. Let's see if I can find it. Hold on a second. I am most definitely. Is it new, please? Sorry if I'm missing it in the chat. Are these the watches here? Introducing the Longines Spirit Pilot watch. Okay, 5 stars. What? Okay, let's have a look. I think this is gorgeous. I like the tribute to the classics. I can always appreciate a bit of a rounded bezel. Right, gonna scroll through. Thoughts on Nirvana? Smells Like Teen Spirit. Not so much of a Nirvana fan, Clive. I'll be honest. I much prefer the classic stuff. Truth Fears, great to have you here, sir. And more comments going. Maina, oops, how did I not see the notification? I think there is a way that you can get notifications by hitting the bell on the subscribe thing. I don't know how it all works on the platform, but I didn't know the notification. Anyway, sorry. I would highly recommend you watch the first 30 minutes of the show. If you go back to the beginning and listen to the presentation, because that was when it really got deep. Now we're starting to move away into other areas. And Mark's saying, what wine am I drinking? It's some Australian Merlot. I don't know the name. It's got a kangaroo on it, so that's easy enough. Am I still a Springboks fan? Chi-Town, after the World Cup, I absolutely am. That was the story behind that. Story for another time. Incredible. They made such a mark. What a history. I mean, it's a divisive subject again. I mean, that All Blacks game in the beginning, gotta love French refs. Anyway, going to carry on through. Hitting the wine once again. Run the Shrink, are you drunk? You guys, who doesn't like Zeppelin? Austin, yeah, my taste in music, again, I'm missing out on this Longines Pilot gadget. Nah, it doesn't grab me at all much, really. I think it looks kind of plain. Might be down to the case styling. I think the case is too generic. Big crown is nice. The numerals are pretty good. Reminds me of pieces of that time for sure. Pencil styled hands, great. It just feels too plain to me personally. I wish it had more stars on the dial. That's it. I mean, you need to get beyond stars and start getting to like sergeant stripes and things, get a commander crest on the dial as well. I don't understand the 5 stars. Does that have to do with the rating that they had back in the day? We're talking about music and Led Zeppelin, and there's not a day that goes by when I can't not get tired of listening to Zeppelin. It's just fantastic. Did I say Zeppelin? Zeppelin. Do I come from the land of ice and snow? No, I don't. I'm definitely not going to start screaming into the microphone either. Anyway, all of you who are joining, it's such a pleasure having you here. If you'd like to ask any more questions, we can start getting away from the Tudor debate. That's the first hour of the show. I think we kind of hit the points that I wanted to. Hope you enjoyed it. What's my favorite piece in the current Amiga lineup? Mark, I'm wearing it. My 57 is probably my most favorite because it just does everything that I want from a watch, really, when it comes to being a dive watch, something dressy, something formal, casual, understated. It's not as big as you would think. It's like 39 millimeters. The lugs take up more space. But in their current line, if I was to consider another watch at the moment, I think the new Globemaster is pretty nice. It's not just from the, wrong image. Hold on a sec, everyone. Tell you all these different windows and openings. I need to try and minimize this. Hold on a second. Bear with me. This show, tell you what, let's open it up. So I do enjoy these constellations. I think they'll be fun to discuss. next week or whenever. But the Globemaster, I made a video about this. I have it open on the screen. I will tag it in the corner of the screen for you to look at if you never saw the discussion on the watch. What I love about this piece is it is not generic. It attacks the constellation line in a different way, looking at influences from the 50s, 60s, primarily the 50s and 60s, and putting it together into something that's not polarizing, something that's basic, has a pipe hand dial, has an incredible movement as well. Talk about the performance there. But, you know, as it is, great looking watch. That's a great question. Thanks for asking me. We watch guys saying, listening to Down by the Seaside. Oh, it's such an underrated track. I love it. It's one of the first, and what they did there with the tremolo on the amp, that is just so genius. I love it. I mean, Jimmy Page, he really knew what he was doing. I mean, he assembled the band, so he would. Go and look up Coda, one of my favorites that they've ever released, Coda. And this watch wasn't, this song wasn't ever actually formally released, but I think it's called Hey, Hey, What Can I Do? Tell you what, one of my favorites. I love listening to it. It's just so basic, simple. It's all just acoustics. But look up Hey, Hey, What Can I Do? Led Zeppelin. Enjoy it. A lot of fun. Watch and Pray saying there have been less than 10 5-star generals, including Eisenhower. Ooh, important. And is that maybe what it has to do? Is that got to do with the history? I remember that, I'm bad with my generals. Patton, wasn't he a 4-star general? That's another one, not 5, but anyway, did he eventually become 5-star? I don't know. Please have a look at the Tiffany CO CT60. Okay, gonna have a look at it now. Globemaster on strap, not bracelet. Good point, you know. And any more chats? I'm missing so much here. Oh, geez. Gibson or Rickenbacker? Ooh, I do like Rickenbackers, but Gibson, I'm kind of looking at a Hummingbird as a guitar one day. There's something about the Hummingbird that I find fascinating. Just the history and the background. It's not an old guitar by any means, but I love the design of it. Okay, let's try and get to this. So it's Tiffany. I don't know what this is going to end up looking like. Tiffany CT60. I have never heard of this before. Ooh, nice. Wow. You know what the first thing that came to mind when I looked at this watch, dare I say, I thought of Bremont the second I saw this. Is that a good thing? You decide. Anyway, we can look at this in a second as I catch up with you in the chat. Gibson or Rickenbacker. I'm a Fender guy, by the way, Chi-Town. Fender is my jam. What are your thoughts on the new Longines flagship? I think this is it, right? Is this not the flagship? This is the Pilot Pro Chrono. I don't know. They bring out a lot of watches. One of my favorite from the line, the few favorites, I really enjoy their reissues, like this gorgeous little RAF tribute piece. This newly released model here, must say, it's quite unique. I do like the format. The case reminds me of the what's it called? The Zenith El Primero A384. Am I getting those references right? Okay, keep scrolling through. Again, I'm sorry that I'm missing you in chat. If you can tag me in the chat, I'll see it a lot. Patton was a double fister. Yeah, he sure was. Amazing what he did. Hey, when it comes to tanks, man, innovated. Never made a 5-star general. Thank you for that blue shirt. And going to carry on through here, I'm missing a lot of you, as always. Modeled of the watch that Franklin Roosevelt wore in 1945. This piece here. Are we talking about this? We're talking about presidents' watches. Think about Churchill's Datejust, and I'm sure I mentioned it. When did I mention it? Oof. The next video that you'll be seeing goes into talking about quite a moment in history. And the way it's going to be titled is this the true Rolex Explorer? Because I believe it is. It has one of the most amazing histories behind it. I think Eric Bell knows what I was talking about. We had a chat about it earlier. God, there's so much chatting going on here. Tudor navy blue for small size. Price is good for a drive watch. Navy blue is real dark blue. Steel is new. Tudor special white steel. Interesting. Thank you for that, Layman. Is that Layman? Thank you for that. There's so many elements. We could be talking about it for hours. I think over the last 15 minutes, we covered what I wanted to say at least. If you'd like to further it in the comments of the video, by all means, go for it as we keep developing through. Let's see what else is going on here. The chat is just going wild. I struggle to keep up with all of you here. Let's talk about Man of Taste. Globemaster is lovely. GMT Master. Ooh, and again, I miss 10 more comments. Let's see. Roosevelt wore a Tiffany. Okay. I'm going to have a look at these watches. Let's get it up again. Sorry about that. And thoughts on the IWC Yacht Club, Maestro. I struggle with IWC. When it comes to Portugueses and all of that, it's difficult to hone in. Barisha asks, what are your modern thoughts on the Cartier tank like the Solo line? Are they too large? Great question. I think, and thank you for the super chat, the tank line, I think the way Cartier has, just in general, design styling, there are few that can really beat the line. I actually want to pull it up. The tank in general, what it has been able to do. I've done a few videos on the Santos in the past and other models. Nothing really beats a classic styled variant, whether it's, you know, the small, I don't even know the scales. I've handled a few, but I can't for the life of me remember the sizes. I think at this point in time, you can find a tank that fits your wrist, any size, whether it's, you know, mid-size, extra large. Sometimes they do go a little bit far with the XXLs, etc. But I mean, just this example here, it's just so clean and clear. When we talk about movements, that's another story, and so it goes on and on. Thoughts on the Lunga up, down, white, gold? Oh my goodness. So this is the thing. I have to like try and keep up with the chat while also trying to present everything else. So looking at these Tiffany pieces. So this pays tribute to a watch that Roosevelt, this is what Dan says, Tiffany CT60 annual calendar model of Franklin Roosevelt, wore in 1945. Man and his watch book. Was it actually in the, jeez, I didn't know that. I've got the book next to me. didn't even remember that point. So what does it do? This pays tribute to a 1945 piece. It doesn't have a telemeter scale, which is pretty good. Overall, the layout is very simple. I hate to say the word generic, but it looks pretty generic in the way it was presented. Is that a good thing, bad thing? Up to you. The fact that it's branded by Tiffany, does this mean this is all in-house made? I don't know the story behind it. If you'd like to fill in more detail, Dan, that would be great. And catching up with more of you. Thoughts on the Lunga 1815 up, down, white, gold. And I think you know you own a Lunga. I think you know the answer to that. A good friend of the channel actually just picked up an 1815 chrono, and it is gorgeous. And he shared a short video with me today about the watch, and it's amazing when you hear the chronograph tick over as it hits the 30-minute mark, the 30, what am I saying? After it elapses over a minute, it makes this very distinct click in the movement itself. So you can have this audible feedback as well as seeing the time adjust. So the 1815 up down, what is so good about dress watches that I think in general, this obviously pays tribute to pocket watches of the time. What I think they've done so well here is understand space allocation on the dial and everything else. So important that many brands don't seem to. I think a lot of brands like the idea of just open space on their dials. I think this is the variant you're talking about. Great photo. So many dress watches nowadays just bank on the idea of simplicity, where I think it's nice having a bit of complexity in the format. Having a movement and you can actually see the running seconds on the side, having a power reserve on the other side, how that then integrates, not perfectly in line with the hour and minute hand, how it's slightly underneath, but as a package, you get this asymmetrical form that has a balance to it. Notice how the text is, it kind of lines up with how the subdials are arranged. There is this triangle effect that you see between the parts here. It's subtle, very subtle. Would this be the Lunga that I would jump on? Probably not, even though these you can actually pick up for quite a great price nowadays, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, and as it is, JLC, Ryan, JLC is great. Karas is saying, talking about world leaders, he really enjoyed Rolex and Pac, and he also really enjoyed Casios, if I remember right. So that's something. Do you miss the Seiko SKX and Saab 033? Mark, I've never owned an SKX or a Saab. I'm not so much of a Seiko lover. But when it comes to getting into the hobby, it seems like such a great watch for people to pick up and enjoy because you can just abuse it. You can wear it and abuse it. There's lots of great comments going on here. I'm sorry that I'm missing you all. The comments just don't stop. I wish there was a way. Maybe I can, hold on. Isn't there a feature that you can play it in slow mode or something? I don't know. Anyway, going to catch up with a few more of you. Eric Bell, Trick makes the other guy die for the country. There's debates going on in between. The worst movie. Talking about Cartiers again. Sorry, Tom Austin, great to have you here, sir. Cartier Drive Dual Time. Nice piece. I'll pull it up now. Perfectly balanced blue shirt says, it is an interesting watch. And I do love the fusee chain version of this. I'm pretty sure they've done an 1815 with a fusee layout. But there's so much more. I mean, expanding on the brand, talking about Lunga. I love how we were chatting about Tudor a second ago, but then expanding to other pieces. I definitely want to try and bring it back and conclude on a rounded note. Also showed the chrono, not the annual calendar. Let's have a look. Tiffany annual calendar. Let's see if I can find it. Did they actually bring out an annual? Yes, they did. Let's have a look. Oh, okay. So I've actually been showing you the wrong watch the entire time. Sorry about that. Really am. This is better, much better. This then reminds me, let's see if we have a better shot. And finally, I've just seen that this reminds me of the code 1159 in a way, the AP code 1159. And they have actually revised the watch a bit. Let me try and pull it up quick. Yeah, you've got to be gentle with me here because I'm definitely slowing down when it comes to showing everything off here. I hope you can just listen to the voice and be lulled. Code 1120. Let's see. If I'm not wrong, they've just released them. They haven't shown, there are no pictures. Come on. The code 1159's had a bit of a facelift with the case. Some have two-tone on the case and on the band, and some are steel. I don't know. Blue Reverso, Duoface, there's more. God, there's so many questions. Again, tag me in the chat because I cannot keep up with you. I really can't. Berish asking me, this may be hard to answer, but what would you prefer, Cartier Tank or JLC Reverso? Ooh, no, Reverso. I'll take the Reverso. As much as I think the Tank has been able to transcend the time period of its origination, you know, in the 1916 onwards, was it 1916? It was 1920s-ish. I still think the Reverso manages to do a lot more in its approach. Clearly, they don't have any images here on the new model. Let's go back to the Reverso. The Reverso is a lot less polarizing. And talking about the Duoface, you're then dealing with a watch that doesn't have numerals on the dial at all either, right? It's just got batons. Or am I wrong here? I'm thinking of the blue dial or the white dial. Here's some good examples. Let's try and get some good images up. Love Google Images. Half the time they work. There we go. For me, I think this is a much more future present watch. It doesn't look like something that was, yeah, Ron saying Reverso times 1,000. Yeah, I mean, it's a watch that is based on a design similar, based in the 30s. But I mean, realistically, you look at this now, even with the way that the case has been cut and finished, it looks so contemporary, so modern, how it's transitioned away. Plus, you're getting, in the Duoface, you're getting a dual time complication. Sorry, you're getting a GMT, if I'm not wrong, a GMT complication. The way that the watch is assembled, the ability of being able to open and close it like a rotating door, has this huge slam to it. It's an amazing watch, really beautiful. And Megan's saying the Cartier Tank is timeless, but the Reverso has stood the test of time. I would say, and add to that, Megan, I would say it has stood the test of time better. I still think the Tank is relevant in the way it's positioned. You can still rock this today, male or female, get away with it, because it is, I mean, everyone knows what a Cartier is. That's something else. You wear this, people will immediately identify that it is a Cartier. And you wearing something like a JLC, Reverso, only the enthusiast would really know that it's a polo player designed watch that somehow transcended out. I just love it. I think the case styling and the way they've done it here. I did a video on this, and I remember the designer who came up with this also helped develop another piece. It's on the top of my head now. He was very instrumental in the development of this movement, and it's because of the mechanism that it's been able to stand the test of time. I think the basculant was Cartier's version of the Tank that had a rotating. Here it is. Oh, that's useful. Let's get it up. Can I get it up, please? Boulang and Sons. The basculant is basically Cartier's variant of the Tank, being able to rotate. I do love this idea of the crystal cabochon sapphire at the top. But is it as versatile as the Reverso? No, I don't think so. Okay, going to carry on through here. There's so many more. There's mention about Dean saying my wife is now staring at the screen. Hide the Reverso. No chance. It's staying, and we're going to get a better shot up of another one. There's so many of them as it is. It's also a perfect unisex watch as well. They come in so many different sizes. I mean, look at that thing. Look at it. It's beautiful. This one especially, the way they've done the case and the finishing there. What a beautiful presentation. Reverso is an icon. Yeah, absolutely. Cartier drive. I will pull that WeWatch guy. I just want to stay in this for a bit longer. Mark mentioning, if you want to finish up the Tudor, talk about the strap options. I've been trying to find a Bund strap like they do with their Chrono, but can't find out anywhere. Is that something that they are doing with this new release? I don't know. But that's a good point. I mean, straps also add to the versatility factor. When it comes to resale and what you're wearing it for, I think a bracelet is probably more, usable on a daily basis next to NATO's. And I mean, you can buy aftermarket NATO straps for pennies on the dollar. So Quen's saying this live stream is so much more sensible. Not really. It's a mixture of, I can tell you, coffee and wine does amazing things together. It's such a good stimulant for the brain. And as it goes, the Reverso is great. It really is gorgeous. And there's so many variants. Now, say what you like about it. We talked about the Speedmaster earlier. Oof, here's an example. We talked about the Speedmaster earlier and how they do all their variants, their Amiga line. Tudor is now doing it with their Black Bays. But JLC with their Reversos, I think they have carte blanche to do what they want. And you're making me think I need another one, rewatch guy. There's never enough. There's never enough when it comes to Reverso. Another point I wanted to mention that I think is just incredible, that really speaks to JLC's approach when it comes to not only design, but also the way that they are the watchmaker's watchmaker, as the industry calls it. They can make time-only variants, but they can also make full-on dual times. They can make power reserves, sun and moon complications, and package it into the same case. And as you go along the line, I made a video on this piece, and I loved what I said at the end, something like, you can get yourself into the seat of just a standard, basic, time-only, maybe a time with sub-seconds. Apologies for the resolution, but you get the idea. Time and sub-seconds, or you go into the solid gold with duoface, with bracelets and everything on top. But either way you pick it, you never feel cheated when you buy into the watch, because you know you're getting something that is just exceptional. I mean, I think this looks more like a tribute to 1931, this example. This is not the most top end in the line, but this piece really does scream elegance, sophistication, simplicity, a brand that understands that you can use your basic simplistic form with an outer design of a case, but cram it with any kind of movement or complication that you want. And just one more watch, as Jody says on his channel. What does he say, Megan? Sorry, I missed your chat earlier. There's so much going on here. This one will be my next watch. I would love to get a JLC as well. And Megan also said, if you want to get straps, the best option is getting custom-made straps, from my experience. That's another thing. You can get a strap that you know was made from certain materials that you want. You can pick and choose what you want exactly. Look at the bracelets. I love how we jumped from Tudor to JLC. I knew it was going to be short. I wanted the Tudor episode to last for about 30 minutes and then jump somewhere else. Anyway, I'm sorry about all the chats that I'm missing. I do try my best to keep up, but it is a landslide. This is a gorgeous looking piece. You can believe me when I say that it kind of reminds me of the Code 1159 in a way. The case styling has a similar effect. But this is, I mean, last wrist shot week that we had, we looked at the way this case has been done and styled, the way the dial has been done, should I say, 1940s inspired. And so it goes. Now I definitely have to buy her Reverso. Thanks so much. Dino, I mean, when it comes down to it, you're not throwing money away when you're dealing with a watch like a Reverso. Coffee and wine, Mark. It's not the best combination. It doesn't taste the best, but it does a good does a good job. Ron the Shrink, what models are you thinking of? And that's just it. I mean, you guys can just chat amongst yourselves about what references you're looking at, and so it is. So, going to carry on through. I don't know what we can talk about now. I mean, we've discussed the Black Bay to death. I think let's just minimize this and pull up the Black Bays on the screen just to keep them there. We can talk about strap options. I'm just going to take a bit of a sit back and read the chat for a little while, because I've been talking nonstop. Believe it or not, after these shows for about a day, I'm kind of hungover because of what generally happens with all the talking. Okay, hitting the wine again. After buying it, I'm going to have to break it in, just to make sure it's working. Dean, for sure. Okay, so is life without talking about hot watches possible? Michael says, good question. Very good question. What's great about, very good question, actually. I'm just thinking about it now. what's great about the hype watches in general, should we say Fisherman's Friend? James, I'm going to get one out right now, as you can hear. Sponsored by Fisherman's Friend, cherry flavor. What's so good, I think, when talking about hype models is that it's an area where there is discussion that really can happen. People can focus in on something more specific. It's a design that people like, whether you don't like the brand or not. I think it's a very, what do we say, utilitarian, all-encompassing design style. Moritz Grossman, Dan asking. It's great. It's okay, let me pull this out again. Yeah, you see I'm running in circles now. I really wanted the show to be about the Tudors, and we've kind of done it. So we're going to wind down over the next, 40 minutes or so. Moritz Grossman, I mean, geez, we're really going all over the place. What was another watch that I wanted to look at before I forget? Geez, there's just so much. Michael's saying I rock, thanks for that. It's always good. Avoid the yellow snow, and then that is the case, right? If they were made the Pedagos that wasn't 15 mils thick, good point. Fisherman's Friend called and said he wants you to pull up Cartier Drive dual time. Okay, we watch that. Let's do it. Let's see. I'm not so much of a fan of the Cartier Drive. Is that bad to say? I think it is a little bit heavy. Oh, this is a different reference. The thing is, what I find crazy about Cartier is that they really do. They bank on the styling with their Roman numerals. If it wasn't for the Romans, they would most definitely be in a different state where they are now. Wind down over the next 4 hours. Thanks, Eric. So what was the reference again? Probably botched it. 30 minutes. Yeah, Michael. Sorry, I missed the comment. Cartier Drive dual time. Give your thoughts. Is this the dual time? No, it can't be, right? It is the dual time. Drive to Cartier. So you see, it's kind of like most of us know that the tank is what established this watch, this style, this approach, and going away from it. Call me a stickler, call me someone who's pedantic. I just don't think it has as much of a gut punch that the tank and those designs had back then. The Santos, a similar watch. Those ones were really the ones that established, and it just moved into this new area. It looks like it banks on ideas linked to the Santos. The presence scale. I do enjoy the octo effect on the dial, though. I feel like that was the dual time that I was looking at, but it looks very difficult to read. Yeah, as far as Cartiers go, for me, it's the Tank Cintre, it's the tank in general, the Santos. Those models I feel are much more in tune with the line. Tudor Glamour. Oh, there's just so much. I saw Clive saying breakfast. Hold on a sec. Breakfast cereal after can help with watch hangover. Try Hater Nut Cheerios or Hater. That's great. Yeah, I'm one for a full fat breakfast. All about the eggs and the bacon and all the rest. So yeah, Ron's saying I love the GOCQ, but I don't know if it's worth the ceramic no date sub. Price is kind of stupid. Oof, I want to get to that actually. There was a question about it earlier. Sorry about this, Tiffany. I didn't really speak about it very much, but there's more happening here. Original CQ. We'll find an original reference. So these are called the panorama dates, if I'm not wrong, with a large window at the base. And if Tom Austin is still in the chat, I think most of us convinced him to jump on this watch. And the reason why, I think it was kind of my, where's a better shot? Hold on a sec. Fisherman's Friend, simply the best. So this one's on a tropic strap, but you get the idea. What I love about this piece is it just feels so much like Glasute's attempt of recreating their Seamasters from back in the day. Amiga Seamasters, there's a similar linkage there. The original Seamaster CK2913, the CQ being a watch from 1968, around about that time. They both pay tribute to those models in a certain way. What I think you're paying for with this watch, Ron, is the movement. You're actually getting a really great in-house movement from a family. Price is very expensive. I think they're like $8,000 plus, though, which I think is a bit much. But there's just this uniqueness behind it that I think makes it quite interesting. It's a dive watch that you can wear that no one would recognize. And that's something that I think more people should be striving for nowadays. I mentioned this earlier in the show that I've just decided on the Rolex that I'm going to be jumping on in the next however long it takes to save, but it's not a professional model. And it's because I'm just so tired of seeing them all the time. I mean, doing what I do, and it's researching, if it's getting hands-on time and all the rest, it gets very tiring seeing the same watch over and over and over again. So being able to go out there and say, hey, I'm wearing a Glashütte CQ from 1968, given to German special forces, starts a different conversation. Instead of it just being a Rolex sub, that's the way it is. Anyway, Tom Austin saying, I love the look of the CQ since I first saw it a year ago. And it's a love it or hate it thing for sure. The dial layout is peculiar, absolutely. It's polarizing. It's got photina, which a lot of people don't appreciate. But I love the format. Just the idea of, I always just think of it from a design development standpoint. This is a new series they brought out recently in rose gold, two-tone. I don't know how effective it is as a format. But I just like looking at when you think back to that time when a brand was experimenting with a dive watch for the first time, and the bezel was not something that was in the forefront. This is linking up with the Tudor story, actually. The brand wasn't looking at how best they could necessarily incorporate the bezel. They just needed to have it there. The dial is what took precedence, which we saw change over time, where the dials got smaller, bezels got bigger. And you think about that point where it's 68 inspired. And again, I guess I can bring up what my pride and joy. A similar example, let's try and get it to fit. A similar example is you're dealing with a watch here that just doesn't really know what it is. And I love that. I really love the fact that the bezel is too small. That means then that it's out of the way. It's not there in your face when you don't want it. The dial I love the dial being so symmetrical. But and I mean, the minute track being large and elongated. This dial, on the other hand, you see the hours are just so expressive. And so it goes. I mean, it's these little quirks that I think really latches on to you about watches. I would love to see more of these over time. I'd love to see more brands digging into their history to recreate or possibly think about how they could blend the DNA from these kinds of watches into their... Such a great point. I mean, we're 86 minutes in. I'm sure most people have left who wanted to hear about the Tudor story, but here we're dealing with two completely different brands. I think they are almost exact in the way that they've approached this exercise. Very much one-to-one replicas of those originals. In-house movements, in-house made, Germany, Switzerland. But they're bold enough to try something different that not everyone would like. But at the same time, it does have an appeal for a different context. I mean, just look at the script on the dial of this watch. How can you not love that? It's beautiful. And so it goes. I mean, it's a continual debate that we'll probably have till the end of time. Andreas, good to have you here. If you missed the beginning of the show, at the very beginning of the show for about half an hour, we run through the Tudor story. Now we're branching into different areas. I don't even know what we're doing right now. Okay, Glashütte, because you got to know when it's time to invade. Ooh, Clive, that's a bit of a low ball. That Amiga is 86 is so cool. That Amiga is 86 is so cool. The Olympic gold, silver, bronze subdials. Oh, the chronographs, the Olympic variants they made. Mason's saying I like photina watches, not because of the faux edge look, rather because of the beige color is nice. That's another point. I mean, speaking again about the patina effect that we get on gilt dial watches from Tudor that we've just seen. Some photina, quote unquote. There's a better way of just saying beige loom. Some are better than others, better executed. Some look way too yellow. Other times, my case, I kind of love the fact that it almost matches the tan on my skin at the moment, which is something that's quite rare when you're based in England. The color is in this kind of lighting, it's very brown, but in outside lighting, it's more of a tan finish. And so it is. I mean, it's a very divisive subject. These reissue watches, made a video all about this a while back that really just tries to discuss this at length. It was difficult though. Okay. And talking about the Blitzkrieg, as Clive mentioned a second ago, did you know that the soldiers were actually given methamphetamine, and that's why they were able to cross Europe so fast? Amazing story. There is a new 39.5 CQ coming soon. And Tom Austin, it feels like Glashütte is a brand that has their finger on the pulse when it comes to looking at scale and presence and proportion. I think it'll be wrong of me not to have an example like the Tudor on the screen, just so we can refer back to it, since this is the Tudor show, or it's supposed to be. And let's have a look on the strap. Are there any good examples of this watch? I mean, this looks pretty great, I must say. I do love the contrast. Apologies if the red is a bit too bright for your eyes, but it really does look good. Okay, catching up with all of you here in the chat once again. I struggle looking. I enjoy beige. It's a nice color. Talking about Doxer, sorry. Blitzkrieg sponsored by ICE. Yeah, amazing. I mean, I watched a documentary. I think it was to do with RAF pilots and all of that, and somehow stumbled on how the Blitzkrieg was so effective. And it really was. I mean, when it came to armies being able to cross Europe as fast as they did, I think they did it in like a week. It was because they were using over-the-counter methamphetamines that were given to them. And it did a good job. I mean, you know, pure energy. Maybe that's what I should be having to run these shows. Who knows? Glasuta, a brand on the up. And it's a brand that is understated, that people don't talk about. It's one that is very, it's German. And German brands aren't anywhere near as over-talked compared to Swiss. And I think that's going to change over time. You can see that Lange is a brand that's slowly creeping in, and people are starting to appreciate the brand. And there's so many variants in this line too. I mean, we can look at their Senator. I think that's the example where it looks similar to a Lange 1. And apologies if I'm missing you in the chats. I really try my best, but it seems like there's so much going on here. Weekday Hustle, thinking about it, they had a show here in Australia. I really like blue dials they make. We're talking about Lange. Yeah, so, and talking about the actual chemical, Pervitin. I tell you, Eric Bell is a wealth of knowledge of this show. And I think he's really going to enjoy the next episode that comes out, talking about the true Rolex Explorer back in the day. But anyway, any more questions on various pieces? Let's try and keep them a bit like linked to the sports side of things, just to keep in tune with what's been going on. We've managed to do it pretty well. We've looked at JLCs, which are very much. Cartier is also, could be considered a sports watch. Look up the Lange Odysseus. Okay, let's do it. Great suggestion. Speaking of which, our man Russell, the word Odysseus, I always double use the D where it's a double S. Lange Odysseus. It is a beautiful blue dial, must say. Our man Russell has just picked up one, and he lives about 40 miles up the road from me. So hopefully I can arrange to meet him one day soon and sit down with his amazing collection. If you don't know who Russell is, there he is in the chat. Russell is someone who submits the most amazing watches for Wrist Chart Week. And just last week, he got a double delivery of this and a Patek 6007A, which is the hype watch from Patek, because it's in steel and all the rest, quote unquote, parentheses. Q Maestro asking, what Rolex are you looking at getting, non-sports? I don't want to give it away, but let's just say that it's very true to form to this watch, actually, in the way it presents itself. Let's actually talk about it for a second. I would like to. We're talking about brands and watches and sports watches. I want to bring up Rolex and just say professional and talk around this. I'm doing a write-up currently, actually, on the Oyster Perpetual line. Oof, wouldn't that be good? Holy smokes, what a gorgeous render that is. Monochrome watches, fantastic. This would be an absolute win. What a great piece. They're still talking about Blitzkrieg in the chat. It's great. The Jared Perigo deep diver. I can do that, Shaitan. Just remind me. Yeah, Rich Buddy, you and Russell should chat because he has the most amazing set. So just talking about this watch, I need to get it in my hand. I hope Russell allows me to get it in my hand one day soon so I can have a good look at it. He's told me a few things about it being a watch that he's really enjoyed wearing it. It's so comfortable. The bracelet adjustment is seamless. And all of those points, I think, are so valid. It's the only thing that really divides me on this piece is the bracelet. I think the way the link is connected here looks a little bit too chunky for what the watch is. But in saying that, it does call back to those traditional pocket watches. It does have this fob watch vibe around it. The GP Laureato, ooh, that's a good piece. I don't want to, what should I do here? Let's keep, I keep the blue navy on. I'll open up a new tab. Bear with me for a second. GP Laureato is a watch that I have looked at recently. It is pretty interesting. It's a pretty interesting watch and so attainable nowadays, considering the brand itself having to sell all sorts. When it came to what's been going on in the world, they seem to be dropping the prices on them so much. very versatile, and it does call back to a traditional piece. So what was the question? Talking about professional models, what a beautiful piece. When we think about professional watches nowadays, we think about this, we think about this, and everything in between. And the write-up that I'm doing on the Oyster Perpetual, it's actually great. I look forward to addressing it. Chi-Town, Jared Perigo Deep Diver, let's do it. I need to take one of these off the screen. Oh, what do I do? Another tab open? God, you guys are killing me. Deep Diver, Diver GP. Don't take me to Jared Perigo Deep Dive. Is this an original? Have they made a reissue of this? Gyromatic. These look like vintage pieces. I don't know if they've brought out another one recently. Great looking watch though. I mean, I love any watch that has a good design around the dial itself. Let's see if I can get something a bit bigger. Doesn't seem like this is a new piece. Maybe I'm just looking in the wrong place. Again, I'm referring to a big screen and the laptop screen. So Dino knows the Rolex I'm thinking about. I'm sure you might. Yeah, for sure. What about the Planet Ocean? Great watch. Can definitely look at that. The GP Seahawk. Oh my God. Okay, so let me just try and get my train of thought. No more suggestions. Wait, hold on a second. I want to get this across. When we think of Rolex as a brand now, the Ramones. When we think about Rolex as a brand, we think about the professional models. It's almost like it's ingrained in our heads because of what's happening. Social media. This platform, YouTube, loves it, and it's the desirable number one that everyone wants to get. But you can crucify me in this. Maybe you can all comment crucify in the chat when I say this, but I don't find these watches to be beautiful in the sense. When I think beauty, I think elegant. And a watch like this, heavy duty, hardcore, has a gorgeous bracelet, but the way it's been arranged, it's a professional watch. It's not elegant as much as I would like it to be. So dealing with a watch like this, barring the bezel, let's try and find just a standard Oyster Perpetual as an example. Rolex OP, let's just do that. When you're dealing with something like this, you're dealing with something that is much more true to the original roots from the brand. Let's see what's a good example here. I'm struggling. Some of these images work, some of them don't. When I look at a Rolex watch, the one that I'm considering at least, I want it to be a watch that pays tribute to the original Oyster, what the Oyster stood for back in the day, and the pure simplicity behind the brand. All you need is a coronet at the 12 telling you it's a Rolex. You don't need it to scream. It doesn't need to be big. I mean, there's talking about size and presence. That's something to pay attention to. But the less professional, the better, I believe, for the Rolex brand, because it's just so out there in your face all the time. And yeah, I definitely hope to share it with you one of these days. Oh God, I don't know how long it's going to take me to ever pick up one, but this is definitely on my radar. It's not the one I'm looking at exactly, but what I wanted to try and bring across is the professional models have, in a sense, marred our vision of what Rolex was originally, being this brand that revolves its sound around regality, simplicity, pure elegance, the Oyster case. So why not pay tribute to that and wear something that does epitomize the brand in the simplest way without drawing attention to you? That's my take on Rolex. I'm not so keen on the professionals. I think they're a little bit heavy, a little bit hardcore, but I do think that the Oysters, the Datejusts, the Sky Dwellers, another example, is a group of watches in the family that managed to underplay and express the regality behind the brand, how it originally started, what Wilsdorf really wanted to push forward. You get this gorgeous utilitarian, simple design, tells you the time, maybe the date, that's it. So yeah, that's pretty good on the Rolex brand. I don't know, there's so many comments coming in. I'm going to have to scroll up and catch up with all of you there. These OPs are gorgeous though. Okay, so Lunga Odysseus. This is a great example of a sports watch from the family. OP is Rolex for the guy who can't stand other Rolex owners. Chi-Town, I mean, that could be something. Crucify him, Clive says. That's great. I think there's some validity to that. Not for everyone. It's one of those watches that you can get and you can just appreciate and enjoy and wear. Let's see what Dino's saying. Blue dial 114200. Interesting point. Blue dial Not so much. Not so much of a fan of a blue dial. It's a bit too polarizing for me. Mentioning grape, mentioning all the other references with what's the other, olive drab. Yeah, OP has a flaw. Truth Fear says. I think one of the elements is there are some details actually. Just looking at this watch again, we can actually highlight these. I think that'll be good fun. There are a few things. I've actually tried to analyze these watches. The hands look a little bit stubby. I think the hour hand is a little bit short. It should be extended a little bit longer. One big flaw, I think, is there's not enough text on the dial, personally. I think there's just way too little, and that definitely goes against what Rolex is about nowadays, modern Rolex. You need at least 4 lines of text on the dial for it to be anything substantial, to make a real impact. And Clive saying, yeah, definitely. So, yeah, talking about boring and everything else, I agree. That's one thing, that simplicity can be very boring, and that's one aspect that is important to highlight. There are a few exceptions in the line, though, that I think is worth looking and noting. So, yeah, the cat's kind of out the bag. I'm definitely looking at an Oyster Perpetual, but it might not be the 39, let's just put it that way. And so it is. I mean, it's quite a mesmerizing dial. The issue that I battle with this watch, looking at it here, it's almost too symmetrical. You look at the dial and you get lost with the batons, you get lost in the hands, all of those details. It's not the best thing, but that's a story for another time. You're just saying that to upset me. No more text. What did I say? Sorry, I'm half hammered here. The OP is the original Explorer Air King. Anyone who wants a classic homage piece need to look no further. And I mean, talking about Air King, it's a very underplayed watch. The Odysseus, that was a good comment saying the Odysseus costs around 28K. Too much, Ryan says. Anyway, I'm going to carry on through here. I'm sorry that I'm missing you in the chat. Clive saying the 16000 blue dial. You're welcome. You see, now you're all thinking that I'm going to bank on an Explorer dial because I love numerals and batons on the watch, but you might be wrong there because I have that already. This is the crazy thing. Let's chat about this for a second, if you like. Ideally, you look at something like the Explorer. I've really been enjoying looking at 214, 270s. Where's a good example? This is a 36 mil. You're dealing with a watch here that is basic, utilitarian, simple, easy to use and wear. You look at this and it kind of has the elements that I want out of an Explorer dial. A boring Rolex is a versatile Rolex, Shytown, I agree. Megan's saying I'm getting the 1655 next. In my dreams, Megan, in my dreams. I've kind of fallen out of love with the 1655. I've realized that as much as I can appreciate a watch, I need to wear it and love it. And a lot of these pieces that we talk about, they're just not ones that really speak to what I would like to wear. Anyway, so talking about the dial arrangement on this has an Explorer-esque dial. It has a spade-styled hand. I think a lot less polarizing than a Mercedes hand. It has a bezel, and it's like wearing a Dive Explorer watch amalgamation that you can use for both situations, and it just works in that sense. What dreams are made of, Bud the Stud says. There's so much. This hobby it's a sickening hobby. That's all I can say. But what I hope to do eventually is have an example of a Rolex, have an example of an Amiga that does epitomize the way the brand has approached things, but not be like too generic in my decisions. John's saying get a 1019. What a beautiful watch. It really is beautiful. And talk about a watch that's non-polarizing. Let's get off the Odysseus. We've spoken about it so many times. I'll pull up a 1019. I think it is one of the most underplayed and underrated watches that the family has ever done. I mean, look at that. That is absolutely stunning. And the white dial variant is a lot easier to get, but black dial, red highlights, rare. Megan saying, I'll have to think of something else for your birthday present then. Oh, geez, Megan. Yeah, we can chat about it. I mean, when all of these restrictions start loosening a little bit more, I do intend to come over to Paris and we can hang, we can chat for hours about what's been going on and just watches in general. I mean, you guys have a museum at your disposal. So, catching up with you here. Do Mercedes hands have plastic parts? A good point, Clive. No, I don't think so. I really don't. Do I not like, oh, I'm tripping over my words here. We watch guys saying, do not like loomed 369 numerals. Hate watches at the moment, NATO says. That's great. That really is great. Weekday hustle. I wore my OP39 white only a handful of times. if I wore a suit every day, it would be perfect. Very interesting. Very interesting. And Rich Buddy mentioning it's an amazing Amiga bracelet. I should actually, sorry that I'm jumping around all these points, but there's so many little details. I look forward to doing maybe a 6-month or a year in review study. There are definitely things I don't like about this watch that needs to be addressed, like the polished surfaces that I guess could be brushed out over time. But the bracelet itself, very articulate. There are lots of little things that this watch has nailed that I wish more brands like paid attention to. It just looks so hardcore in this configuration. I think it looks like a mil-spec piece. Anyway, I can't stop talking about this watch. I've been wearing it for 2 weeks straight, and I just don't take it off. It does everything I need on a daily basis. Works. Milgauss isn't working for you, Michael. And Thomas saying it does look great. And Thomas Burnett is the proud owner of a gorgeous Z Blue variant. Mark saying there's nothing not to like with the OP. The dials are perfect and clean. Defo don't need more than that. More text. Yeah, I was joking about that though, Mark. Right. Radio, because I find this hobby exhausting at times. So looking at the Explorer, what I find so fascinating is that it's another watch in the line that has become the true parentheses hype watch in this space. You can think of it as the transitional professional watch. Let me try and get a better shot for you up here. I've really been enjoying won't say anything. Adrian Barkenjack, his photographs are absolutely amazing. I do love them. Where's a good example of a 214? Come on, you got to give me something good here. Why am I getting these small references? 214, 270. I think of the professional, not the professional. I think of the Explorer, this variant, as a transitional between sport, professional, and more, utility, everyday wearer. And it's fascinating how it's becoming like this own niche hype watch on its own merit. And many people just lust after this thing and say that it's the one watch that they need and that's all they need and own. I couldn't do it. I couldn't own this watch as a one watch in a collection, I don't think. And it's down to the details like the numerals on the dial and all of that stuff. That's a different story. But as a one watch, I struggle to find something. Looking to quit. Hold on a sec. Rob is saying, quit looking at your wrist or buy another watch. That's a good point. Very good point. Mark asking, what watches do I currently have in my collection? I have Rabish in my collection. I can tell you that much. The Amiga is the best I have. I have a few Smiths watches, but I'm basically on the verge of selling everything. In the end, I would like to have maybe 3 in my collection, and that's it. Less things to be drawn to, watches that I can just wear, enjoy, and not feel the need to grab into stuff. I really don't have a big collection. I've been lucky enough to get some great hands-on time in the past with pieces, but in general, my collection is nothing to talk about. Does it do nothing for you? Does it do less than nothing for you? This watch, in its current configuration, there's so many areas that I find kind of perplexing about it. The numerals being one, I think they look a bit too retro inspired. The bezel needs to be rounded, not flat. It makes the presence a little bit smaller. It gives it a bit more of a rounded feel. The size and scale, I really struggle to like this variant very much. Maybe it's just because it won't fit me. I've tried on one of these before. It's just the size and the scale of it on the wrist doesn't just hit the proportions. They just tightened it up a little bit. There's been mention that it'd be great to see Rolex bring out a 37.5 mil piece in this line. And how could they then address, just tapering it down ever so slightly? It's all about tightening things up, being anal retentive and tightening things up like scale, size, proportions, details on the dial. I do like how they've addressed the text on the dial. I think that's pretty great. Again, this image isn't big enough for all of you to see. Here's a great shot on Reddit. We've discussed this watch so many times. And then there's this infinite debate on Submariner versus Explorer. Which would you rather go for? Q Maestro asking my wrist size. It's about 6 3/4. I don't know. It's like 17-ish centimeters, depending on the heat and everything else. I haven't been to the gym in like 10 months. So forearm has shrunken a bit. Anyway, so yeah, there's so much going on in the chats. I'm missing all of you here. Blake Taylor saying everyone is so obsessed with sports models, but I think you're right. The elegance of the oyster case is the foundation of Rolex history and success. And I really hope to ring that through with the video itself. I really believe that the Oyster Perpetual is a watch that, I mean, look at this example. Imagine they brought out a Milgauss based on the OP style. I just love the fact that it's a Rolex that doesn't draw attention to itself. There's just too much going on with a lot of these professional pieces. And, you know, you can rock up. I like the idea. I like to put myself in a situation where I rock up to a meeting and there's someone on the other side of the table wearing a professional watch, and, you know, they criticize the size of the Oyster Perpetual you're wearing. And then you can say something like, well, this does speak more true to the original brand and what it was going for in the first place. So yeah, there's lots of depth to it. Mark's saying, bang on with your assessment on the Explorer. The Lume is awesome, but aside that, give me an OP any day. It's all open to interpretation, for sure. I know lots of people love the watch because it is versatile. I mean, this coming from someone who loves text, who loves the idea of batons and numerals on a dial. I think they're just in tandem. There are days when I love the idea of just simple batons, but having the numerals on top of it just adds an extra element to look at. That's what this watch has managed to do so well, and that's what makes it universal, unique. But there are things that age it for me. It's funny, this doesn't feel as aged as this does to me. These numerals on the dial, I just don't like the typeface. Stupid designer, pedantic thoughts. The 1016, on the other hand, a little bit more interesting. Or the 5500. Explorer 1 is an awesome watch, though. I mean, there's no denying. And the Mark 121, that's an interesting piece. And you're saying it's better because of the polished white gold elements. Silver, black, and red, that's all we need. Good point, Eric Bell. I mean, we're talking about blue and how the blue watch seems to be this monster that everyone loves to see. But, I mean, tell me, I'd actually like to know, how will we get this as a community engagement or feedback in the chat? I want to know from you whether you think black is more versatile than blue as a color scheme. I really, truly believe that the day that blue becomes more versatile than black will be a special one. I honestly think that when it comes to color schemes, white is also very versatile, but is it as versatile as black? Don't know. I'm missing all of you in the chat. Are there any more comments requesting other references? I don't know. Somebody send me some straps. Do you know? Modern Explorer number screams 90s and 2000s, Shaitan. Good point. And there are a few watches that have this exact same format. I think Longines has a near exact same typeface on this. Black is beautiful. I mean, that's a common expression that we use in South Africa. Black is beautiful. And it's true. I mean, it is. It works so. I mean, this is a gorgeous looking shot. You get to see the details here. So Gwen's saying, my live streams, Harvard or Princeton University. Kindergarten, preschool. No, man. I mean, what happens is, a night before the show, I think about what would be a good topic to discuss, and it generally just devolves into anything and everything. Community engagement is the best part. Did Steve Biko say that? I think he might have. Shaitan, I really don't know. It's Stephen Biko. Was what, Biko or Bizo? Stephen Bizo? Biko. Steve Biko. Shaitan, my African history. Steve Biko. Thank you for that. He might have said it. Green goes with everything too. Talking about olive drab, fantastic color as well. And so it goes. I mean, what's another good example? Let's just have a look at olive Rolex. This is, ooh. Now we're looking at, ooh, this is gorgeous. Now we're looking at day dates and all the rest. But I mean, as far as color schemes go, I love the way they've done the Romans on this piece too. This is so contemporary. Deferion, I don't know what's going on here. It's saying no, horned lives matter. Yeah. As it is, keep going. This is quite a gorgeous configuration. I must say, the way they've done the Romans here are modern, contemporary. There are no serifs on the layout. The Hulk green goes with leprechauns. Let's have a look at that for a second. Speaking of which, this watch has just been discontinued. I saw a headline recently, I think it was on Instagram, social media. The Hulk has just been removed from their website. Maybe I'm wrong. Someone can maybe clarify that for me. Clive saying many of the modern Rolex sports have been blinged up too much. And that is the underlying thing that is important. When it comes to professionals, especially, the reflective quality and all of that, another thing that I find so sad is that brands, and actually this is a perfect diatribe, would you say? Brands feel it's so important that presence is key. And it's a fantastic thing. Just talking about business and design and advertising, you being someone in a room wearing a 42 millimeter watch, it's going to be noticed more. So odds are Joe Average is going to come up to you and say, what are you wearing? It's an Omega. That discussion then goes, he says, oh, I love it. And so he goes out and picks one out. You can give these watches to ambassadors to wear. They can be photographed across the room and they're wearing a watch that's so easy to recognize. In saying that, I do admire a watch like the Black Bay Navy being a lot more pedestrian. It's not big and brash and in your face and reflective. It's more subtle in the way it's been presented. And that's another key feature that I think watches like the Oyster Perpetual does so well, is it's not in your face. It's not aggressive. It's not begging for your attention, similar to this watch. It doesn't beg for your attention. But some others, I mean, this watch does look, I mean, in this lighting, it looks absolutely gorgeous. But the polished ceramic bezel, the non-reflective coating on the crystal is practically made to be reflective, you know. It's things like polishing, brushing. Talk about the gold variants in the Rolex line. Same thing. Radio saying in reality, nobody cares about your watch. Do you? I think, yeah, we do read into this a bit much. This whole discussion about the Black Bay effect. I mean, who really knows or cares? Shaitan's saying Hulks look enormous in real life compared to the pre-ceramic black subs. Down to not only color, the green color scheme would visually make the watch look bigger. The super case, dreaded super case, shake my fists. Berisha asking, look up the Longines flagship heritage. One for let's try my best. And I've missed all the GP Lorioto. There was questions about the Lorioto, the deep diver. This looks great. I love the numerals. Reminds me of that Oris 65. Okay, let's try. Longines flagship heritage. I'm going to start there. And the reference number is, oh my soul, this is probably it, no? Let's see if I can find the reference, 4719523. Let's see, is that it? Yes, close. Yes, this is it. I do like it. I really do. This does pay tribute to those originals. This is a oops, no, man. Work with me here. Oh, dear. Oh, dear. I've broken it. I've broken Google. Hold on a sec. This does pay tribute to watches of the 50s, I think, and they did such a great job with those seconds running on the center dial, the flagship, the pole router-esque dividing lines. Talking about black dials wearing smaller, I want to get back to that question. Just purchased a green Aquaterra. Great watch, William. Very utilitarian, useful on a daily basis. So Mark's saying black dials wear smaller, white dials wear big. Would you agree? No, absolutely. Visually, it's not so much, you shouldn't actually judge a watch by its measurements. I think it's a failure path. So when someone says the watch is 39 mils, that's great. It's great to know, or 42. The color scheme plays such an important role. Visually, any color other than black really looks bigger than its suggested size. And you know, as it is, we wear black clothing because it helps shrink. You wear white clothing, it makes everything look bigger. And the rule of thumb is generally 2 millimeters bigger than it's actually suggested. So you're wearing a 39 mil dial that is white. Odds are it'll wear more like a 41. Whereas the Explorer, they say it's a 39 mil. This wears more like I'd say a 40, a very decent 40 in the way it's done. Seeing this next to a Submariner, it's insane how much dial architecture takes up the presence of the watch, and that can be a detractor in saying that. You know, we get deep. We chat about all sorts of things. Talking about this flagship, this watch would also probably wear 2 millimeters larger than its suggested size. And Quet's saying that the Black Bay Navy is great. Black dials matter. What else is going on here? I'm missing you all here. Rather than wrist presence, I think people should wear what fits them first. Another thing, Tom, it's not so much down to it being a watch that stands out, the masculinity behind a watch. I think that trend needs to go. The idea that a watch is big, therefore it's masculine, and that 36 millimeter watches don't work anymore. Come on, you're wearing a day date. Who cares what size it is? It's a beast. It's a beautiful thing. Enjoy it. And there's so many benefits to a smaller size watch too. We can jump back to the Black Bay Navy. Again, I want to keep this relative. You're dealing with a watch here that has a 20 mil lug width, I think, or 19. There's such a great relationship between bracelet and case. which you don't get with watches like a 39mm variant. This is a pretty good example. I mean, this is good, but I mean, still, the bracelet looks ever so small relative to the large 39mm size. You're looking at a 36mm version, though. Let's have a look at the 14270. Look at that relationship there. The bracelet, I mean, think about what bracelets were represented as back in the day. Bracelets were these things that were a part of the fashion zeitgeist back in the day. An accessory that you wear that has a great amount of presence on the wrist that you can admire, as well as, you know, the watch head is almost like an accessory on top of the bracelet itself. So there's all these little things. We can talk about this for hours and hours and hours. What's a good sports watch for a tiny 6-inch wrist? This is a good example. It really is. I love Tommaso's videos when he talks about this watch can fit a 13 centimeter, 10 centimeter. Soon he's going to say, you know, like a 5 centimeter wrist comfortably. It's great. I love it. This all started with the Tudor Black Bay. Yeah, it did. And it's nice that we're, you know, sort of rounding ourselves back in. Russell's saying my daily is a 34mm date. There we go. I mean, if that's the case, Russell, then really props to you. Because Russell has everything from World Times to, what is it, Telluriums to longer ones to Odysseus's to longer Phantoms and all the rest. So, I mean, it's that kind of thing. The 5, Chi-Town, great point. Let's actually pull that up. Great. I find it funny that we haven't chatted about the GP. You know, jumping around on brands. I hope you're enjoying this general talk that it's evolved into. The 5, what am I saying, Rolex? 5065. So that's the 36mm. I have worn one of these before and was shocked at the lack of presence, the weight and everything. Chi-Town, that's a good point. Under the radar. Yeah, Tom Austin, I agree with that statement for sure. And Russell saying flies under the radar. I think you're talking about this Patek. So this was the original Aquanaut, released in what, 1995? And I mean, I love that, similar to the Oyster Perpetual. Maybe it's not so true to Patek's original identity, but I do love does size matter, Radio asks. Not if you know what you're doing. And it's like a perfect analogy for watches. If you know what you're doing, size doesn't really matter at the end of the day. It's a pretty good little analogy there. So dealing with a watch like this, 36mm, I was blown. It felt like a swatch on the wrist, which is crazy. But what they've done so well here is understand balance on the dial. They understand proportion. Not so much a fan of the date window, but it's nice to see how it blends in with the highlighted batons on the dial. And there's an under the radar low flyer that no one would recognize or notice, you know, in our community especially. You must also think about theft and everything else. No one would know what this watch is really. You know, so that's it. The great 3 is there on the Patek, and that's the thing, Rich Buddy. Why they got rid of a 3 and replaced it with a date window, it just saddens me, because this is balance right here. This is scale. Does the presence, I mean, does the scale of the watch being 36, does it detract from the overall presence of the watch on the wrist? It's up to you. I mean, I really was, it was on a, I think it was pretty much this watch. I think this was the actual watch that I wore. It had patina all around the dial, it had olive strap on it, and it just flew right under the radar. You forgot you were wearing it. Good thing, bad thing, I don't know. You're paying a lot of money for these watches nowadays, which is sad, because the Aquanaut was always to be there for someone who doesn't necessarily want to get into the more like hardcore sports line, and something that's a bit more youth inspired. 316, is that a Bible verse? Did I say that? So wristwatch experience. It's interesting to see reviewers often claim big watches wear smaller and smaller watches wear larger. Yeah, I don't get it. I really don't. Another thing, I mean, it's all great to say that the watch is 36 mils and everything else in scale, but they should also emphasize that due to the color and the layout on the dial, like the batons and the minute track, the way it's been arranged, that all plays a part in how it wears on the wrist. And in this watch's case, it honestly looks like it wears much smaller. It feels much smaller than 36 on the wrist, I can tell you. Just because of these added details here, the bezel being brushed and not polished, all of these little bits and pieces adds to the wearability factor. 36.5, good point, Rich Buddy, thanks for that. Parmigiani Florio Tonda, oh my goodness. Okay, let's have a look at a few. Let's pull up that, if I can. I think Parmigiani does quite a great job in their identity when it comes to how they approach. Oof, there's so many of them. I don't know, when you say new, is it a new color format? And Parmigiani, they're similar to Laurent Ferrier. They also play with assegai hands. Catching up, James. What a pleasure to have you here, sir. Good evening. If you're watching tonight, loving the stream. Shout out to Thomas Burnett, my daughter. Keep up the good work. Thank you, James, and stay safe, everyone, for sure. I'm glad you've been enjoying it. The discussion went off the rails, and now we're chatting about anything and everything. Dino's saying the Vacheron Malta does the same for me. Looks huge, but shakes my head. You have to keep looking if it's on your wrist. It's so funny. When I make a video about pocket watches, ooh, industrialization. Well, radio, the video I brought out this week, Thursday, was all about how the chronometer changed the world, looking at John Harrison and that history. It was amazing. But I would love to do that. Railroad watches, industrialization, amazing story. I'd love to cover it for sure. I'm actually going to come back and remind myself on this later. Don't like the date window. We don't see this brand often, as Megan says. This watch looks cheesy, BDEF. Parmigiani, I get it. Good one. I don't know if this is the new variant you're talking about, but I find it interesting. I look at a few of these brands, Parmigiani, Laurent Ferrier, and Moser. They all seem to have this similar way of how they approach their designs. Classically inspired, for sure, but also very organic in nature. They try to keep them a bit more modern revival. I do love these. I think of the Vacheron Patrimony when I see these gorgeous teeth-style batons on the dial. It's very clean, uncut, simple. So what is Clive saying? Your future king wears a PPH. I didn't get that. Sorry, Clive. Nice dress pieces you got. Do I? I don't really. Man from Uncle. Let's see what else is going on. I'm missing all of you here. Let's see. Rich Buddy says dress watches great dress watches to add once you've built your foundation. Those three you just mentioned. Good point. So I said Parmigiani, I said Laurent Ferrier, and Moser. I think they all offer their own thing, and they approach their watches in their own way. I think you said Tonda, didn't you? I feel like the Tonda is more like a squared off case. Maybe I'm wrong. But I mean, when it comes to talk about, just there's so many of these brands that we don't hear spoken about that I would love to talk about, but they just do not get any attention on this platform, which is sad. It was a Parmigiani Tonda GT Chrono. Okay, let's have a look. Is that it? Oof, Tonda GT Chrono. Let's see. Oh, wow. Very vintage. So this is the latest release, 2016. I hope that's not the latest release. You know, when it comes to, it's another thing. If I don't follow them on social media and all the rest, I do botch it half the time. I like this, though. What a gorgeous bracelet. They've done a really good job here. So it's nice seeing when a brand really tries to hone in on their own unique approach when it comes to things like bracelet designs. Very often we see watches that just are so generic in the way they exercise their ability in understanding how bracelets work. This looks to be a much more in-house, thought-through idea. I wish there was a better shot of it sideways. Thank you for the suggestion. It's nice seeing a bit more of a Haute horology piece. I do enjoy the balance. The coin edging around the bezel is a nice touch. Also love, oof, they've done a good job with the case here. Let's focus on this. This is great. Look at that. I've never seen, have you seen what they've done here? So they've used the way that the lugs work, act almost like crown guards for the pushers. And they integrate them on top of, that's clever. That's really clever, sharp. Parmigiani is known as a brand that loves to have these overemphasized teardrop lugs, and they've exercised that very, very well here. Sorry about these images. Let's see if there's anything better. Oof, that's a goodie. Interesting looking piece, must say. So you've got a date complication, you've got a full chronograph with 60 minutes. I like that layout on the dial. That's very modern. Very Bauhaus, actually. I think German almost, in the way that these plots have been arranged here. Sporty, elegant, interesting, very interesting. Chip Gage saying Tonda, meaning round, circular in Italian. Thank you for that, Chip. Okay, I'm going to catch up with you in the chat again. Mason saying bigger watches wear smaller because most designers mitigate the design of large watches with a lug design to make it wear smaller, but by feel, if nothing else. But designers of smaller watches don't have to design them smaller, so they have a little greater freedom. It doesn't matter so much if the sub 40 watch feels a touch larger. Mason, I'm going to have to take some more coffee to try and understand that a little bit more. I need to get my brain back in action. But yeah, I think the long and short of it is, does the presence really feed back to the proportion and scale of the watch on the wrist? I think that's a very important factor that people should pay more attention to. In this example, the watch does look big, and have they exercised the proportion on the dial pretty well? They have. Things like full batons around the dial, how the sub-dials are integrated inside. They take up a lot of space. The skeleton hands are great. You can read everything at a glance. It's a unique brand. It's definitely polarizing. And navy's a nice color with yellow gold. Nothing wrong there. And that's it is. There's some more here. What's this? Oof, that's even nicer. Wow, that's really cool. That is really cool. This immediately reminds me of the Globemaster that we spoke about earlier. Look at that. You're telling me that all of these, how's that? All of these batons inside here are skeletonized. And it's got a big date window at the top. Oof, I need to see better photos of this. That is something else. Is it new? I don't know if that's a part of the line as well. You see what I mean when I say that new releases really skirt under the radar half the time. Give me a good example here. This is it. What an interesting configuration. And I love it when a brand has a call sign and they stick to it. Say what we like about the Black Bay, but they seem to love to stick with the snowflake, and that's the one element that defines them. Having a look at this example here, you can see that the lugs are what really translates through into what Parmigiani does with their language. The pushes look cool. Parmesan is a nice, good on pasta for sure. Silicone strap. It's all integrated as well. Clean. I really like it. Yeah, we've had a pretty good job discussing all of this. And you know, I made a big mistake. These watches use black lume. You're kidding, Doc Baps. That is amazing. So what would it glow in like I can actually see texture. I don't know if you can. If you squint at the screen, there is actually lume inside these plots here. Wow, that is quite something. I need to hit the coffee. Clive loves snowflake hands, like me. Part of Tudor's brand identity, and that's it. And with every brand, I think it's so important to have something that does call you back to what you're looking at. I mean, you look at the Submariner, you see the Mercedes hand, you see the dial layout. You look at Longines. They do quite a few things that are unique. I do enjoy the way they've done the logos. Small little touches that bring you back to what makes the brand its own, and cut it as thin as you like. This is probably the best call sign that Tudor has that links the brand to itself, its heritage, and all the rest. So Shaitan's saying, I still can't warm up to golf watches on rubber straps, silicone. Yeah, that's the thing. I want to make a video all about rubber straps and how they just aren't versatile because they break. They're not the best, should I say, they're not the best bang per buck out there, because rubber just degrades. It'll eventually fade away over time, and you end up having to spend a lot more money on them over the period of time, next to bracelets and all the rest. That's a discussion on its own. It reminds me of the UN Marine, loving the Parmigiani, Dino says. I mean, there's so many brands within brands that are just not spoken about. So maybe someone who's joined the show for the first time that has never heard speak about the groups, I hope you've taken something away from the Tudor discussion, but also looking at these more peculiars. I mean, we've looked at everything from Cartier and onwards. Longines. Longines. Thanks, Radio. That's great. So Michael R says, I actually wear my Tudor Black Bay steel on a rubber strap. Interesting. So it's all down to what works for you. And another bonus about wearing a watch on a rubber strap is that it really underplays the piece. What is my consensus on the Oyster Flex, Doc Baps? Great question. The Oyster Flex is probably the best execution of a rubber strap we've seen, because it attempts to, I think Everest has actually gone the same route. A couple of third-party brands are going the same route. Let me try and pull one up for you. I'm thinking Yachtmaster 42 Oyster Flex. I love this thing. I think this is pretty, speaking about scale and presence and proportion, they did a great job here. They really did. Speaking of which, when we talk about a watch that's not a professional watch, this is technically, but the way it's been done, it looks great. No, it really does look good. So Rolex did a great job with the Oyster Flex, incorporating that titanium core, I think they called it inside, allows it to conform to the wrist more comfortably. It has a lot more rigidity behind it, which is important. But just in general, you know that you're going to be replacing these over time, that you have to have a different strap for summer and winter if you're lucky or not lucky. I don't know. Megan, thank you. A big thank you. Thank you for the super chat for another great show. Don't forget to send super chats. Thank you, Megan. Really, it is such a pleasure having you here. I cannot wait to travel out to Paris. It's going to be my first stop when all of this happens and opens up. Q Maestro, what do I think of Amiga Constellation on rubber? I haven't actually considered the Constellation on rubber before. I think next to Rolex, Amiga hasn't really hit the nail on the head, but they have done some great stuff, like with the Aquaterra, that Golf Aquaterra that they made. Actually, Aquaterras on rubber straps are pretty fascinating as a pairing, but as it is. And Thomas Burnett, I haven't seen you in the chat tonight. I really hope you're okay, and it'd be nice if you direct more comments to me because I miss you, man. I miss you. And Russell saying changing straps is a part of the fun. That's a good point. It really is. This piece really does fly under the radar. 42 millimeters, has a great amount of presence. With the rubber strap, it would wear smaller. You're dealing with white gold, if I'm not wrong. It's all white gold. And they've done a great job here. But it's such a brilliant business practice, releasing a watch on a rubber strap. Because what does it mean? It means that you're dealing with a material that is nowhere near as versatile as something like steel that will never corrode or get damaged, really, get scratched, but it'll never, break down. Of course, this strap is a latex rubber hybrid. I'm sure they include all kinds of polymers in the combination, but you do know that this is going to have to be replaced over time. So Rolex is just rubbing their hands. It's another avenue to jump on to get another and another. It'd be great if they had different colors with it too. Shaitan, designing a golfing watch to automatically break when you hit a hole in one. I mean, there's all sorts of things. I do love the concept of a golf watch because it needs to withstand stupid amounts of G-forces, and because of that, golfers generally don't wear watches, and it's quite a great party trick if you can wear the watch, play golf, and have nothing go wrong with it. And yeah, Yachtmaster Oyster Flex is too expensive, but does look cool. That's another thing, price. You're paying for rubber, and you're having to pay a lot of money for the rubber. So that's something else. I do like the fact that it's white gold. It doesn't look white gold. It looks just like your basic everyday steel watch, but it has something nice underneath. Tom Austin, how's the merch side project going? Okay, well, that's in the development. Actually, coming up this week, I'm thinking of taking a break from uploads, and I would like to work on what's been going on lately. I've got a few renders that I'm working on, a couple of ideas. I'll keep you posted. I will keep you posted on what happens over time. I'm most definitely. Chip, wow, thank you so much for the super chat. I miss these chats because they go so fast. Really appreciate the super chat, Chip. It's such a pleasure having you here. I really hope you've enjoyed the show, even though it's been all over the place, as it is. How do I explain to my wife? How do I explain my wife to buy an $8,000 watch on a rubber strap? Radio, good point, good question. You don't have to. You can say that. Another thing that I think works is when you can explain to your wife that it is a precious metal, then you get the approval. Because ladies love the fact that it's gold, that it's platinum, that it's yellow gold, at least from my experience. Ghetto drunk, Robert says, that's a bit too hardcore. You spend a lot of money if you don't invest in rubber. That's it. Oh, I get it. Nice underplay there. I'm not reading you correctly. So tell your wife that it is a precious metal, and you'll get away with it, because generally ladies love the fact that it's either gold, white gold, or the rest. And thank you, 50337 Andy. First chat just subbed. I hope you've enjoyed the show. It's been a bit weird and all over the place. I love that. Dino, that's probably the best chat, the best comment you've mentioned on the show. You spend a lot of money if you don't invest in rubber. That's funny. That's really funny. Anyway, we've been chatting about so many of these pieces. I don't know. I want to try and bring it back to, should we bring it back to the Tudor line? We've been going for 2.5 hours now. I don't want to drag it on for 3. I think that's a little bit too extensive, but I hope Lexter Dexter tune in late. The first 30 to 40 minutes of the show goes through all the specs you would need about the subject matter, and then it just divulges into all sorts of madness, as it generally does when it comes to discussing pieces. We've stuck to the sports theme pretty well, though, I think, as a show. Mark saying, do you think the Yachtmaster 42 is too big? Everyone complains the Yachtmaster 40 wears small. I think they've done a great job here, honestly. 42 mil Rolexes generally, thank you for the super chat, bud. Really, really appreciate it. Michael, 2.5 hours. Yeah, this is nothing. This is just a pit stop. Generally, Rolex 42 models look a little bit too big in the way they've done their proportions, but this piece has a great, it shows what Rolex could do if they decided to make a 42 mil Submariner. Heaven forbid. I think they'll ruin the golden proportions of the watch, but this is a clear example of a watch that probably still wears more like a 40 than it does a 42. And that's down to the integration of the rubber strap, which brings the watch's visual presence down. The numerals on the dial, the bezel, it's been executed so well. Presence here is sweet. It really is so clear. The 40 mil variant, I don't believe wears, actually it might. And the reason behind that, let me pull it up. I do enjoy it. I haven't chatted about Rolex for a long time. It's pretty fun. Forgotten where it all lies. Where's a good example? If I can find it on the wrist. You see, the big issue is that you're dealing with a watch here that has a bezel that matches the color of the case. Very much like the 40 mil Daytonas. They look much smaller on the wrist because of the bezel being the same color as the watch itself. Similar to why the Explorer 2 wears a lot smaller visually. And it's down to the bezel not really being there, therefore bringing down the overall visual presence. There's so much. I mean, we could have a talk just about watch proportion on a show in the future. Okay. And Megan's saying my sis has a great custom Yachtmaster, which is really special. Oof. I can imagine it has the rainbow effect on the dial and all those details. T. Taylor saying 39 to 42 is a sweet spot. It really is. I think some brands do it better than others though. There is that as well. Isn't there a Yachtmaster that's 37? There is a Yachtmaster that's 35 as well, GM Shadow Traders. 37 is an interesting one because it has, if I'm not wrong, it has rose gold in the finish. Let's see if I can find it quick. I feel like they do come, oof. I mean, you're talking about something that plays it pretty low and understated. I think this is a 40. Might be wrong here. I think Hodinky had a video on this recently. But they do come in a gorgeous rose gold finish with a lovely tobacco dial as well. I think these are 37 mils. It is 37 millimeters. This watch would probably wear bigger than 37 mils. And as it is, just keep going and going. Shaitan's saying, could we argue that the purpose of the Yachtmaster is a bit less cool than the sub? Great point. You know, this video that I just arranged over the course of last week talks about a very certain individual who, let's just say he explored the world with a watch. And the Yachtmaster is a great watch that pays tribute to that in a sense, which is something that I should have probably mentioned in the video, but focused a little bit too much on the story itself. Is it as cool as a Submariner? It doesn't have the same amount of history, but it's a dressier Submariner. The case, the way it's been polished and finished, much more streamlined, a little bit flashier in the way it's been done with the polished center links and all of that there. And as it is, it just keeps going, and I could just talk in circles for hours and hours on end. But I think for the next, up until the half an hour mark, I will stop the show because I think we've had a great time. Everyone's been chatting amongst themselves, which is fantastic. I really hope you've been enjoying that area because it's just what makes the show more fun. And P01 is brilliant, Megan says. It is a cool watch. I think I made a video about it discussing the complexity, it being such a peculiar development from the line, but shows that they're willing to be daring, born to dare. Mark's saying, this stream has been awesome. Thank you so much. First one I've caught live. It's a pleasure having you here, Mark. I really hope you've enjoyed it. And I've said that about 100 times already. Q Maestro, last one. Thoughts on the Zenith A384 Shadow? Oof. Yeah, you're talking my language. The A384, as far as chronographs go, I think there's a few of us here. A38, oof, hold on, A384. And you said Shadow. What's that about? Is that the blue dial variant? No, it's not. Ooh, that's gorgeous. That is really nice. When we're talking about chronographs, another watch that manages, of course, it's a redesign. It's a recreation of an old school piece for sure. But for a watch that takes that inspiration from late 60s to 70s era and managed to modernize it in a way. This does such a good job. Low in profile, low in presence. Another brand that I feel like has the finger on the pulse when it comes to understanding presence and proportion, how that's going to last in years to come. They still make the original 39mm El Primero. They now are producing these. These are like 37 millimeters, I think. And they're just so classy, what they are. This, I must say, is nice. It's a PVD case, I would imagine. Is it carbon ceramic? I don't know. But black on black with all the white accents there. You can read the time easily. You can read the chronograph, the subdials, just the scale of everything done. The subdials are there, and you can read the chronograph at a glance, which is what a chronograph should be about. Not a no date. Good point there, Q Maestro. Ooh, I didn't notice that. Chronograph should be about reading the chronograph first, but also having it be a watch that you can wear on a daily basis. That's simple, basic. Yeah, I love it. I really like this piece. Are there any more examples? Let's get some better lighting. I must say, it's polarizing. This looks like titanium shadow. This does look like a titanium case now that I look at it. Of course, it's polarizing because of the color scheme. It's very gunmetal, very German, actually. You could imagine this is a German piece. Shaitan's saying first Amiga in space. That'll be the last one of the show, I think. And Megan's chatting about Oris and everything. Yeah, that's great. And Robert's saying that the Amiga 300 you still enjoy. I mean, it's a gem. It really is. First Amiga in space. And Thomas, thank you for the super chat, Thomas. Let's pull that up, and we can run the show to then. I put a video about this and Speedmasters a couple of weeks back. Put it up on the channel. If you look on my channel, you'll probably see it top 4. It's one of the most recent videos I've released. And it's a good shot. There's a goodie. There's a question about Rolex that I missed for a second. Hold on. Let's see if I can catch it. I hope. Mark's saying Rolex. I only found you because of your previous Rolex reviews. You should do more. You should do more, and they'll bring more traffic to your site. Mark, there comes a time when the way I present videos, it's normally if the content interests me. Does the watch interest me at that point in time? That's generally. I'm definitely not someone who can do a review on demand. I've realized. If it's not something that grabs my attention, then it's not something that I'm going to be invested in to really dig deeper into. I'm working on one about the Ploprof, which I'm loving. Such a lot of fun. Working on one about the OP39, which would be great. Amiga Rolex, such a great pairing. Great diversity there. So this was one of my most recent big videos on the Speedmasters, and I spoke about this watch. And it was in the running of being the top contender next to, and these watches are virtually identical. I'm going to pull up my watch again. Seamaster 57. Case design is exactly the same. It's just I love the applied logo. There's some things that I wish that they had done here, like an applied logo on this watch. But for me and my tastes, I need something that can be worn every day that I can I mean, I've been showering with this. I need to go swim in the sea with it soon. But just as an everyday wearing watch that I can use, bash around, not really care about. The Seamaster did it for me. It's a more versatile sports watch for my taste. The first Amiga in space is much more dressier. It's in the dressier category. Great hands, as Thomas says. And there's always talk about the relationship between the hands and the subdials. And I do love the fact that the chronograph lines up with the hour and minute hands, and they're different but the same. And as a transitional piece, they did a great job here. Speaking of which, I feel like this watch needs a step around the minute track, if I'm not wrong, because this is based on the CK2998, just before the CK2998. No? Yeah, and there's talk about Ploprofs. Guys are saying they love it. It's just, I don't know how I'm going to title the video, but it's just so ugly but awesome at the same time. It's a real enthusiast's watch, and I've seen ladies wearing it. And I mean, the piece is like 44 mils and just doesn't make sense. But when we talk about its intent and history, I really look forward to discussing it in detail as time goes by. Anyone know the lug to lug on that Ed White? I would imagine it's the same as mine. 73 math. The lug length on this is kind of like, it's about 49 mils. It's about 49 and a half. It's pretty long. The presence of this watch, you'd be surprised. The presence looks huge, actually. The watch is 39 mils in diameter, but with the lugs, it adds some size to it overall. So I would say about 39 and a half mils, if I'm not wrong. And yeah, as it is, I hope you've enjoyed this chat on everything and anything vintage inspired and Tudors and all the rest. I do really enjoy this watch though. It's one that I continue to come back to because of the small details like the alpha hands and all of that. Any more chats? Let's see, Dino, the Eco Drive. Is that a Eco Drive 1? Is that a Citizen? Is it? I don't know. I can't remember. Anyway, catching up with you a few more. Eric Bell, 55 mil. Is that it? A 48 lug to lug on the Plo Prof. Oh, that's amazing. I think Eric Bell has one as well. Annoying when brands make it smaller case size but stick long lugs on it. I think that's one of the detractors. That might be something that might pull people away from watches like these and my Seamaster, because they can't. I mean, the 41 mil Seamaster that they brought out looks huge as well. Citizen Eco Drive. I think that's the variant I'm thinking about, Shaitan. But we've had pretty good time just chatting about watches in general. And if you have lasted until the end, there's still 250 of you here, which I cannot believe. Thank you. Do a Timex video, Rob. That's a good idea. It really is. The one underlying thing that I wanted to cover about this watch is that it's a great litmus test to see what the community wants, clearly what the community is interested in. And from this, brands can actually take this data, because you know that companies are looking at this watch from all the different families and saying, how can we emulate the feedback that this watch has received? And that's just it. There's so much more depth to the discussion that I hope you might have found here and there. I don't know. Again, I can't remember what I said 2 minutes ago. So if you enjoyed the show, then yeah, I really appreciate it. And Dear Artifact saying, always appreciate these. Oh, pleasure, man. It really is. Dear Artifact, if you're on Instagram, I'm going to tag him here in the comments. Dear Artifact has an amazing, very eclectic collection. Follow that tag. And you'll see that he's someone who enjoys the monotone side of things. He likes watches that aren't necessarily polarizing. Black Bay 58s, Hamilton W10s, or was it a G10? I can't remember. Hamilton W10, Speedmaster, basic, but watches that get the job done. And that's it's incredible. Thanks for the show, everyone's saying. It's a pleasure having you all here, as always. And talking about dive watches, I think finally I can sleep in peace knowing that I've explained as much as I could have about this line, what this line could represent. I hope you took something away from it. I don't know if it even made any sense. I'll have to watch it back and listen again. But to all of you who are still watching, I'd like to thank you. I'm going to close this off now for the evening or the morning, wherever you are in the world, and stop the screen share. And what I'm going to do over the course of next week, I think I'm going to take a break for a week. Haven't done that for, I don't know, a month, 2 months. I haven't taken a week off from the channel. I want to kick back, maybe enjoy some sun, if there is any. I might have to drive out to France to get some sun at this rate. So Clive's saying, if you're petering out, try some Haterade. Yeah, I haven't even finished the coffee or wine. You know, I've been talking so much. And all of you who've joined, I mean, Robert from Tampa, that's fantastic. Everyone who has been a part of the show, I think the community engagement is really what the fun is. I wanted to actually highlight the comments that was linked to the Black Bay video that came out earlier this week that I made. But as it is, we were so sick and tired of talking about the watch within 40 minutes. It's pretty great that we jumped around and had some fun in other areas. Come to Jamaica. Oh, I'd love to, Dino. I really would. I really, really would. And as always, Russell, I need to reply to your email. I'm going to arrange a time when we can actually meet up. I would love to see your collection, get some hands-on time, get some footage. I'd love to know what you do, Russell, because as far as collections go, tasteful, to say that. Clive saying, sorry, stay on. No, I have to. I mean, it's 12:30 in the UK. I've got to get a good rest. Apparently there's good weather in the UK tomorrow, Sunday. Got to try and get on top of that. But again, for all of you who've joined, I hope you've enjoyed this peculiar and strange show. Submit your emails. I think my email is in the description of this video for Wrist Chart Week, which is happening next weekend, possibly, maybe not. I don't know. I want to take a full week off, 7 days. But I will be saving them. I'll be saving the images regardless. And Wrist Chart Week is always a pleasure. We get to see such a diverse selection of things. Come to Wisconsin. I hear lots coming out of Wisconsin, Q. Yeah. And all of you here, thank you, night horologists, as Neferion says. Have a fantastic weekend. I hope you're all looking after yourselves. As always, keeping yourselves busy, enjoying this time that we get. I think watches in general are such amazing objects that allow us to appreciate things like time and history and where they came from. And please, if you can, watch this video that I put out on Thursday. It's called Why the Chronometer Changed the World. Simple title, all about John Harrison, the invention of the marine chronometer, and that history and how what it really means in the modern sense. Yeah, I speak way too much. Thank you everyone again for joining in, and for the last time, I'll see you in the next one, probably in a week's time at this rate. Oof, I would love to come to Texas, T. Taylor. Okay, I've got to go. Thank you everyone. Look after yourselves, enjoy your Sunday, and cheers for now.